7 o'clock, I'm going to open our planning board meeting for the night. Everybody knows that today we're we're going through the traffic study for Valley Greengrove. We're going to keep all questions. If everybody would actually sign up. We're going to keep all questions to traffic. Please don't sway. We've added 3 extra meetings for our board. We have to really keep in line, so questions, traffic only. We're going to run it. We're going to have the applicants do the presentation. So we'll have our.
We want
You don't want to do the traffic review first? Engineers? All right,
Okay.
I think we should do the engineer.
Okay.
So we're going to have our, I'm sorry guys, we just want to make sure that we're going to have our consulting engineer. I'll have her introduce herself and go over her. She is reviewing the traffic study that was submitted by Valley Greengrove. So I'm going to let speak, and you can introduce yourself.
Right. My name is Jennifer Conley, and I'm from WSP. Let me just ask, has the audience already gotten a presentation from the applicant to at least know what was included in the traffic study, or do they not know anything?
So
They have not gotten a presentation on traffic yet.
that's what I was going to do, but
Yeah.
I kind of got.
So,
Yeah,
Okay.
usually it makes sense for them to give their presentation. It just in the timeline, instead of hearing what I had a concern with first, and then they'll present it.
And I'm sorry, I was just told that police and highways here, and we want to get them in and out, so that's why I halted from our normal way.
Gotcha. Would you rather hear their concerns right
Is
away?
that- Anybody have any? That's what we were just talking about.
why don't you ask Jerry and if you want to come now or later?
So, Jerry, would you like to come now, later? What do you think? I was trying to do you guys a favor.
No, I appreciate that, but actually, I was going to listen to the presentation first,
Okay.
so I know what I'm really talking about.
Please, would we like to also do that?
It's probably not a bad idea.
Thank you. I was trying to do you guys a favor.
Why don't we have the consultant then?
So we'll have,
The only thing, the game starts at 8.
right.
the big screen.
We'll mute it, but we'll have it up there for everybody. How's that?
I broke protocol. I tried, you know.
Yes, ma'am. So again, my name is Dan Leary with with Valley Greengrove Project, and I'd like to introduce Rebecca Brown from GPI, who will be presenting the traffic in our traffic study process this evening.
So I can give you an overview of kind of what we did in the traffic study, but I do want to point out that the traffic study that was completed was done back when a dispensary was considered on the site. That element has been removed from the proposal now, and only the cultivation center is actually proposed. So everything that was included in the original traffic study is extremely conservative. It shows overestimated impacts because it includes that dispensary element. But I can still kind of walk through to show you sort of the study area that we looked at, the elements of the traffic study that we did include, and talk about how we're going to be adjusting that as we prepare an updated traffic study that we'll likely have out to you within the next couple of weeks, and can discuss that probably the next meeting. So this is just kind of an overview map to show you kind of the study area that we looked at as part of the traffic study. And again, when the study was originally proposed, the site was intended to include this large area here where the cultivation center was proposed on this portion of the site, and the dispensary was proposed over here with access out onto Route 20 for the dispensary, and access onto via L. Turner Drive onto Old Worcester Road, right out in this area here for the cultivation center component only. The study area that we looked at included the intersection of Old Worcester Road with L. Turner Drive and Old Worcester Road with Morton Station Road. Part of the reason that we included that is because we knew that there was concern over traffic headed down Morton Station Road towards the schools, in the morning and afternoon time periods. And then we also included 3 intersections along Route 20, one being the intersection with Old Worcester Road, Route 20, our proposed driveway, and then the Center Depot Road and North Main Street intersection. And then there's also a U-turn area that's just to the west of Old Worcester Road that we also included, where traffic could use that U-turn area to turn around in order to make U-turns to get access into that Route 20 driveway that was previously proposed for the dispensary. The traffic study that we did included a review of the safety aspects of the project as well as the operational aspects. And I don't want to go too much into the operational aspects of the project tonight, only because all of that is going to change quite a bit with the change in the use. But as far as the safety elements, a lot of that is still the same, so I can focus a little bit more on those aspects tonight. So we did look at the collisions that had occurred at each of these study area intersections over a 5-year study period, which is typical for traffic studies based on Mass DOT guidelines. So we looked at the period from 2011 to 2015. All of the study area intersections had 3 or fewer crashes per year on average, and crash rates less than the statewide and district-wide averages. The only exception to that was the intersection at Morton Station Road, where even though there was only 3 crashes that occurred over the entire 5-year period, because the traffic volumes are so low at that intersection, the crash rate in terms of crashes per million vehicles going through the intersection was high. It was about 0.94, which is higher than the statewide average. We did, based on comments that we received from the peer reviewer, take a look at the patterns that were actually occurring there and those crashes that did occur. All 3 crashes occurred when somebody from Old Worcester Road took that corner a little too sharp and clipped somebody who was coming up Morton Station Road. Part of the reason for that is it's a pretty steep grade and it can be difficult to see out of Morton Station Road in either direction when you're approaching that intersection. So we're looking at what we can do now to improve that intersection so that doesn't happen by altering the geometry of the striping, improving the sight lines to see what we can do to make that intersection a little bit better. So that's one of the things that we'll be looking at within the next traffic study that gets submitted. The other element that we looked at was sight lines for the site driveways, and I won't talk about the one on Route 20 since that one's not included anymore, but the one on the site driveway out onto Old Worcester Road. We did look at travel speeds along Old Worcester Road. It is posted for 25 miles per hour right now. We did measure speeds along the roadway, which we actually measured on this section right here, which is more of a straightaway. So people are going a little bit faster than they would around those curves right at the site. But the 85th percentile speed, which is the speed that 85% of traffic is traveling at or below, was 33 miles per hour. So we looked at sight lines for a speed of 33 miles per hour at that location. And we were shy on meeting them for existing conditions. Based on a speed of 25 miles per hour, which is the posted speed, we do meet the minimum required. But based on the 33 miles per hour, it was a little bit short. So we're looking at improvements for clearing some of the vegetation along the roadway and regrading a portion of the site so that you can see a little bit better as you're coming out of there. One of the comments that was brought up from the peer review was to provide a sight line diagram that would show the profile and the curvature of the roadway to see what the sight lines are. So that'll be something that will be included with the next submission so that you can see what the sight lines are and how much work is actually needed to be included in that. In terms of traffic impacts that we did look at, as I mentioned, these are the study area intersections that we looked at. We collected traffic counts in the beginning of June during the weekday PM peak hour and the Saturday midday peak hour. That was partly because the dispensary that was proposed has its highest peak hour during that time period. And traffic volumes on the adjacent streets in the morning are significantly lower than they are during the PM peak and the Saturday peak. So we hadn't previously analyzed the AM peak, but we've heard that there's a lot of concern for traffic in the morning with the schools So we did go out and do updated traffic counts in September during the morning peak hour, so we will be including that in the new traffic study that will be coming out. We know that at the time that we did the counts, because of the timing of trying to get this submitted, the seniors were already out of school. So we updated the PM counts while school was in session in September at the study area intersections along Old Worcester Road. Those traffic counts actually showed only about a 0.3% change in traffic volumes from the June counts when the seniors were out to the September counts. And part of that is because the PM peak is from 4 to 6 p.m. and at that time school's already been out since 2 o'clock. So there's not a lot of school traffic that's still coming through at that time period. But we did update those counts, so we will be providing that additional information. We did project traffic counts out to a 2025 condition and analyzed the traffic operations at all of the study area intersections. Based on the peer review, I don't think there was any objections to how we had done that previously, so we'll continue to project out traffic volumes in the same manner. The old study indicated that there was very minimal impact at any of the study area intersections. The one intersection where there was an issue was at the Route 20 and Old Worcester Road intersection, where there was a level of service F on the westbound left during the Saturday condition, actually. So we're looking at some signal timing changes, which we'll reevaluate as part of the updated study and submit that information back to you. But otherwise, I'll let Jen kind of walk through her comments, and we can determine how we can address those comments and other comments from residents as we move forward into the next portion of the study.
Chairs? Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so again, my name is Jen Conley, and I'm a traffic engineer with WSP. And we, over the years, have been hired a number of times to help the town out with reviews when they're, kind of technical in nature in regards to traffic. So as you can tell by Rebecca's presentation, she has already taken into account some of my questions or some of my concerns and is updating some of the data. But I'll just give you a brief review of what I found and tell you how it would affect the conclusions of the report or the findings that were presented in the report. Again, we can all look forward to seeing what the update says, but in general, I can tell you kind of where I stand and what my concerns were as of when I reviewed this. In general, they describe the existing conditions that are present in the field, and they looked at, as she said, the PM commuter peak period and the Saturday midday peak period. I was concerned about that because I did think it was driven more by the traffic of the dispensary piece and less by what would be impacting you folks on the local roads here. But I did take a look at that traffic data that was collected here and looked at the trip generation characteristics of just the cultivation center and confirmed that really the PM and the Saturday were the more intense times traffic-wise. Those two things combined together. So again, that's the combination of what's currently out on the road and what's anticipated with the new development. Since they have collected additional information, it will be great to have and will further provide us with that analysis in the AM peak hour. But based on how it was presented in the initial study, I was concerned that they might have missed something in the neighborhood because they were looking at more of the larger impacts of that dispensary, which might have skewed the data a little bit. So that was that analysis. We took a look at then what the seasonal adjustment should be. Although I found some additional data than was presented in the GPI memo, overall June does tend to be an above average month. I think any of us who live in Massachusetts know traffic's a little less in the winter and a little higher in the spring into the summer, especially when school is still in session. And as such, the data sources that I found also said June was above average. It is nice, though, that we will have, when all of school is still in session, we'll have those September counts to take a look at as another data source. As Rebecca indicated and was not identified in the report, what did concern me is as soon as I saw the conditions near the site and saw that the Morton Station Road intersection was having although it doesn't sound like a lot of accidents, 3 crashes over a multi-year period, it still was higher than average based on a rate that you calculate of how many crashes you have per 1 million entering vehicles, and compare it to what the state average said. And especially after seeing the conditions by the site in the limited sight lines around those curves and as a result of grades, truly that was where my concern is what is happening there? Is it impacted by the sight lines? Is there anything we can do to improve that condition? And now that there'll be more traffic coming in and out of the site, will there be a similar concern at the site driveway? So safety was certainly a focus of my concern once I looked at those site conditions. As far as adjusting to the future conditions, Rebecca did say, I did check the steps that she used and did concur that to calculate kind of the future traffic, she went out 7 years, she assumed a background growth rate of 1% per year. Although some sources would give it, say traffic in general grows a little bit more aggressively than that, it would be quite possible that this project would be open before the 7-year time frame. So I'm not as concerned about that, what could be a 2% difference in traffic because of using that slightly different growth rate. The trip generation, as I think anyone who has seen my review letter knows, and Rebecca's initial study, we rely typically on a publication by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And for something like a housing development that's developed all the time, it's very easy to come up with how many trips a housing development is expected to generate. And it is shocking when you go back years later and count it, how close it comes. Really, for a lot of land uses, there's so much data about how many trips are generated, we can be pretty confident what will be generated. This land use, however, it's new. It's new to a lot of places. It isn't in the guidebooks yet. So it is a difficult thing to pin down the number of trips that would be generated by it. There are a few things. The trip generation, I followed the steps that were included in the study, and based on the number of employees that they state they're anticipated to have, they present a conservatively high trip generation because they assume all of those employees are all coming within the same hour and they're leaving again at the same hour, which presents a very conservative case. As I think, wherever we all work, I know not everybody arrives at the very same time as I do. There are people who do different jobs who come in earlier or later than me, and so there's usually more peak spreading. And so as such, the methodology I found it to be very conservative. There is a concern I know from the neighbors about, well, what if it's more? And I understand that concern, and I don't know if there is something that the planning board can do condition-wise or through the site and the parking spaces or something else to limit the number of cars that could come to the site for employees. So whether it is via restricting the number of cars that can be on the site through what the parking is or a condition or something else to give the neighborhood that comfort level that what I'm telling them is a conservative analysis stays a conservative analysis and they don't end up having twice as many employees at the site. And what that discussion with the applicant could yield is if there's a real hesitance, then it may be that in the future there would be more employees and you should have a frank conversation about that. So that way the neighborhood is protected in how many trips are really expected to be coming to the site when it's fully operational. That all said though, the analysis based on the number of employees that are predicted provides a conservative estimate of the trip generation that would be coming to the site. As Rebecca got into and connected to the earlier discussion on the safety, the site distances in that area are very limited. And in fact, I found them to be more limited and have less available sightlines than was presented in her study. So she did identify some deficiencies. I found with my engineer went out and measured and I drove by the site as well. I was even a little more concerned, and that's why I asked them to put it on the plan and to make sure it's been checked, and they're saying there's this much sightlines currently, and these are the amount of sightlines that we are committing to put in place, so that there is again a clear condition that outlines how they're going to improve the safety in that area. I think that's very important, because I did find the sightlines to be, at L. Turner, to be deficient. As far as the capacity analysis and the operations of the intersection, which does tie into the trip generation, because the traffic volumes in this neighborhood are very low, there is additional capacity available. Additional trips can travel on these roads and not cause an extreme amount of delay. Now, where you are going to feel that delay is up on Worcester, coming on and off of Worcester Road, but in the neighborhood there will be more traffic, but it is not going to eat up the entire capacity of a 2-lane road. So the analysis results that are presented in the report, I did check. They were done correctly. And as such, even if the trip generation estimate is off, there is still that excess capacity available. So it isn't that there's necessarily a capacity concern at these local intersections. As I said before, really my concern is the safety, and the safety of the neighbors to be able to manipulate in and out of these roads, and even the future employees. I mean, for everyone, it would be better to have the correct sight lines along Old Worcester Road at both of the intersections. And that was my conclusion.
I have a quick question, and then I'll have highway and police input. The traffic, we keep on saying employees. Does this also take into effect all the deliveries that will come in? Obviously, this is a manufacturing company, and there's going to be deliveries.
True.
Does that trip rate account for all of those?
It does. So they provided an analysis that listed not only the employees that would come and go, but how many deliveries they're expecting to have of what type of product coming and going from the site. Now, I am not an expert in this field, so I can't judge whether those are accurate numbers. And I don't know, again, if there's a condition that the planning board can put in place to protect themselves in that regard. But it is definitely something that, as they've presented it, they've said the number of deliveries, and then they've assumed some of those occur, on the typical day, and some of those occur in the peak hour. Which in a way is conservative, because in a lot of cases a delivery driver is going to shy away from the busiest peak hours, but it is accounted for, yes, in their estimates.
And the rate, and so the ITI gives you rates based on the business, and what's the rate for manufacturing used for this?
No, because again, they based it on what they're anticipating for employees and folks at the site. Because although it is going to be doing some manufacturing, a lot of it is, the cultivation. It isn't necessarily all processing. Is my intention, and that's something, to keep kind of an eye on, to make sure of that.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. You can choose the order. Questions, presentation, let me know your problem. Can you please just introduce yourself so everybody knows?
Hi, I'm Jerry Foskett, the Highway Superintendent for your town. Planning board asked me to come tonight to possibly have some input into the information that I was just listening to. I have a few things that I can maybe repeat, basically. There are issues on Old Worcester Road due to traffic. The increased flow on Old Worcester Road due to this business is gonna have an impact, no matter what they do with sightlines, no matter what they do with anything. We all know them roads are gonna be improved. Improvement of roads only means speed. It only means more accidents. With all due respect to all this data and these studies that they do on numbers, the bottom line is, no matter where you go in this town, the increase in traffic is gonna decrease your ability to move fast, which people don't want to do today. Now, this is strictly my opinion as a highway superintendent, and my history of what I've seen in this town. I'm probably on the top of the list of people that don't like to see the growth in Charlton. So I'll get that out there to start. So if you see that kind of coming out of me, then that's what you're seeing. It does have a good side. Obviously, the revenue's great, but I'm not gonna sit and listen to sight lines are gonna be improved, so we're not gonna have problems. There's gonna be problems. The problem is, there's gonna be a lot more vehicles. The roads are gonna get improved through a project that we all are gaining greatly on, is that new water line. We're gonna have nice, new, fast roads. There's a lot of these roads that can't be improved. You know, private property issues, everything else. They may be able to improve along their border, the owner, you know, the company's boundaries, but that's it. I do agree that the sight lines along El Turner Road could be improved. I've tried as a highway superintendent, we've done a lot. Believe it or not, it's a lot better than it used to be.
I'm sure.
But the bottom line is, you know, you have to accept the growth. That's where I've come to in my life. This is what we're all facing. And with that comes, it's just not gonna be the same. From a highway perspective is which I'm standing here, I do have a couple issues that maybe I could throw out there. They've probably been beat to death already. But in my opinion, strictly my opinion, not weighing who's going in there or what, I think for the best interest of the town, El Turner Road should be discontinued, should be made their property. There's nothing to gain by the town of Charlton having to plow and sand that road. It's basically a driveway, it has been for years. So I think that should be looked at. That's probably my biggest issue. These traffic studies are great again, but I gotta say that at release time, when the people go down to Route 20, even with a working light, they're gonna be backed up over that hill. My experience comes into the winter conditions. That hill is a nightmare going on Route 20. You have cars backed up around that corner, which is probably what's gonna happen. The possibility of an exit out of that farm onto Route 20, I think is a great option that should be looked at, should be pushed. That's just my personal opinion. That won't answer everything. You got 150 employees, they're gonna leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're gonna go in all different directions. They're gonna travel on roads that were engineered, built, and still are a country road. They're gonna be hills, there's gonna be curves. We do our best with what we can, but that's just what they're gonna be driving on. And I think people just have to understand that it's not gonna get improved. They may improve coming out of El Turner, but that's basically gonna be it. Old Worcester Road's still gonna be hilly, curvy, and dangerous. And you're not gonna tell people they can't go that way. Other than that, I mean, I would be glad to answer any questions that maybe through a highway's eyes I could answer. But this is such a huge project, and the impact of the town is huge. Now's the time to consider any option that may be there. And again, I think it's worth repeating. El Turner Road has no value to this town the way it's gonna be. Other than the plowing, the sanding, upkeep, maintenance, other than that, it's a driveway. The option of opening up onto Route 20 with DOT is probably a dream, it probably will never happen. I think that's something that should be talked about heavily because of the impact in my own traffic study that I do every day out on these roads would be meaningful. But yet that creates all other issues for the mass highway to deal with. I mean, it's people backed up going onto Route 20 without a working light is gonna be an issue. So it's not all cherries there either. So I know there's been a lot of work put into it by all you folks. I'm sure a lot of interest from others, but that's all I have to offer at this point based on what I've seen tonight.
Because I'm lucky and I can talk, can I ask you, do you think that this is going to affect Mugget Hill? That it's gonna make it any worse? Because I can't get out of Mugget Hill half the time. I can't pull off of Bond and Freeman on. Do you think that the traffic, because you know the roads better than anybody in this town, what do you think?
Well, it's funny that you asked that because before I come up here, I was at my grandson's ball game down at Bond Road. Here it was almost like 7:15. And I thought there might have been an accident up on North Main. The cars were backed up on Mugget Hill, down to Old Mugget Hill at 7:15 at night, getting on to, you know. So is it gonna have an impact? I can only say, look at it from the common sense view. If I work at this place and I leave at 3 o'clock and I live in Oxford, how am I gonna go home? I'm gonna go down Oxford Road, really, right from Morton Station. Is it gonna have a direct impact on that section of the hill? I don't see how. But, you know, just like Old Worcester Road is gonna be impacted for those that don't wanna get in that line going on to Route 20 with a working light. Everything has an impact everywhere else.
Thank you. I was concerned about that.
That would be
Appreciate it.
my opinion.
Thank you. Unless you have, you can talk, speak all you want.
I've really spoken a lot more than I normally do.
I appreciate it. I can't, I'm not gonna open questions. We just wanna get, now, I'll bring up our, police department representatives so we can get another whole, just so we have all the information in front of us, so we can.
Hi, Danny Dowd. Chief Maxwell couldn't be here tonight. Officer McGrath prepared some accident data, which you can look at. He looked at accidents occurring on Old Worcester Road, Morton Station Road, and those are just reference points, those are intersections. So some of the accidents might have occurred on Route 20, but they reference Old Worcester Road. Old Worcester Road may have had nothing to do with the accident, but that was the nearest geographical point the officers looked at. Over a 5-year period, up till today's date, he had 31 accidents, 29 of which occurred, had something to do with Old Worcester Road, and 2 of which had occurred on Morton Station Road. There's been no fatalities or serious accidents. Now, of course, there could have been other accidents not reported. Minor fender benders, you know your neighbor, you work it on amongst yourself, the police never get called. So I certainly couldn't elaborate on how many accidents may have occurred. But what I can tell you is that we had 29 on the Old Worcester Road area in the last 5 years, which probably averages out to be about 6 accidents a year. As far as speed, I know the traffic's reported that they were traveling probably higher than, I think we have that in a lot of towns, in town, on a lot of roads, as far as the percentile. We're trying to address that with the traffic officer, because it's not just Old Worcester Road. We get that everywhere. People travel on Brookfield Road, Masonic Road, everywhere, so I don't think that's unusual. I don't really have anything else. If there's something, I'll answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions?
Officer McGrath is here. He may be able to elaborate more on something if you wanted to.
Would you like to speak?
I'm actually here just to, I put this data up this afternoon. Sergeant Dowd asked me to, just to look back. These are just accidents that we responded to and wrote a report. As he says, there may be some that were minor in nature, under $1,000 worth of damage, that no officer report was written, or, as he said, that we weren't called for. This is just the data from October 24th, 2013 to today.
And just to be clear on an accident, this could be, they could be weather related. I mean, there could be ice on the road, and a car could slide off the road. If there was more than $1,000 worth of damage, it would still be deemed an accident because the damage to the vehicle is more than $1,000. I know at least one of them, they hit a pole, so that, you know, probably was a single vehicle involved, so they weren't necessarily 2 cars in a collision, but they could, you know, of those 29, although that could have happened, some of those were certainly single vehicle accidents.
Does this data lead you to any suggestions for improving some of these intersections, physical geometric improvements that might minimize some of the danger?
I mean, certainly speed's always a factor, people paying attention, you know, just distracting, that they get distracted. Any of those things would possibly help. Just throwing it out there, obviously, this project, I think, speaking for the chief, I'm sure if we could get access to Route 20, I'm sure everybody would be a lot happier about that. We don't have a lot of, you know, trailer trucks normally traveling Old Worcester Road. I don't know what kind of trucks this facility will have to get up and going with construction. I don't know, Jerry, with the culvert and stuff when they start on Old Worcester Road, will large trucks be able to make it by once they start doing construction with the water line? I don't know.
As much as any other vehicle, but that culvert will shut the road down for 2 weeks approximately, so that's not a major thing, way before this project.
So those are issues. I mean, obviously, Route 20, the light will probably have to be changed if you don't get access to Route 20 as people exit Old Worcester Road. have to get out on 20. I assume during peak hours, you might have to have the state readjust so people aren't getting backed up, and, you know, you certainly don't want cars all down Old Worcester Road trying to exit out onto Route 20.
Even now in the morning, sometimes there's.
Absolutely, absolutely, but you have to assume there'll be more.
So you would provide more lean time for the Old Worcester Road traffic as opposed to the.
Well, somebody smarter than me is gonna have to figure out how to run those lights. I mean, certainly, yeah, I would assume so. I mean, you don't wanna be sitting there, likewise, you don't wanna be sitting there at 3 o'clock in the morning for 10 minutes to, you know, while the light changes. So some happy medium is gonna have to be sought. So I'd assume, you know, during peak hours, you'd probably adjust the lights so people leaving or coming in, that the lights work a little bit advantageously.
If everything goes through and this project goes in, will there be police there policing the no turn on red for the first little while? Because I know that's a major issue right now. As you come down onto to Worcester Road from Old Worcester, it clearly states no turn on red, and that is people are constantly making that turn.
I'd like to promise you we could be there every day, but there's just as many complaints in other parts of town about
Sure.
the same issue with the same staff, and we try to spread them out. But I would certainly bring it up to the traffic officer.
Thank you.
But I think we would make an effort, especially while construction's going on
That's
there,
right.
if that was to take place, just so that there wasn't any.
And my new employees are getting used to the pattern, it's probably
Well,
helpful to
exactly.
have a little police presence.
Sure. And we see a little bit more problems in the morning with school buses
Oh,
and
yes.
stuff as far as, you know, people coming out. Well, I think a lot of kids traveling to school come up, take Old Worcester, and they want to take a left on
Yep.
Morton Station, and the steepness of that, these cars are pulling out, so, I mean, hopefully that would get addressed with any type of, that corner there, just in the morning. In fact, probably just in the morning, most of school.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, do we want to open it up for questions while we have? So we'll let the board ask questions first, and then we'll try to get the officers. That's what I'm trying to. Okay. Great, so we'll open it up to the board for questions.
I do have a question. All right, so right now, as remarked upon, the sightlines are horrific on that area. I can't imagine, when you come to pull out of the orchard, then you can barely see anybody coming to your right. And if we're adding traffic, especially if we're adding tractor trailers, which are gonna be taking the lines, can you give us, I know you don't have the data in front of you right now, but can you give us an idea of how you're going to improve those sightlines?
Sure. So part of the issue with those sightlines today is that when you're coming out of there, there's a steep hill
Yes.
to the side. And so we're looking at regrading that area and bringing that hill down so that you can actually see over that, to see around that curve. There's also some overgrown vegetation that's not very well cared for, that obviously that would be cleared out so that that would increase the sight line as well.
And how does VGG feel about making L Turner a private road as opposed to a public road? Is that something that you would be open to?
No objection.
Okay, thank you.
So the crash data on Morton Station and Old Worcester, you said that it's higher than normal. Were you able to extrapolate from that with the increased traffic on how many accidents we might expect over time, or is it an increase of twice, 3, 4, 5 times?
Yeah, we didn't do any estimation of how many crashes might happen in the future. We just looked at what the patterns are today. So today, the crash pattern is vehicles that are pulling up onto Morton Station Road, and then vehicles that are making the left-hand turn from Old Worcester Road onto Morton Station Road. The vehicles that are making that left-hand turn are cutting that too close. They're crossing over the stop line. We're not going to be increasing any traffic on that movement, because that doesn't lead in or out of our site. The movement we'd be increasing is coming up Morton Station Road for vehicles that want to take a left headed to the site. That's a movement that we would be increasing. Only about 15% of the site-generated traffic is expected to use Morton Station Road, so it's a relatively limited amount of traffic, but we haven't done anything yet to look at estimating future crashes. What we'd like to do is find a way that we can geometrically improve that intersection so that we don't have that type of crash actually occurring at all.
So you're saying only 12 and correct me if I'm wrong, will be using Morton Station and coming that way. Just because I know this town, I grew up here, depending on where your employees are coming, if they're living in Webster, Southbridge, Dudley, any of the areas where people would actually, Connecticut, where they could actually afford to work at where the majority of the jobs would cultivating, they'd be coming down, they would be all coming through the back roads, they all come now through the back roads. They wouldn't be coming 20, and I'm telling you that because I live in this town and I know where people come from, so it kind of concerns me that there's no analysis of, because Mugget will be, anybody in all the way down to Richardson Corner will all be affected because people will take that cut through. I take that cut through. So I think that the analysis should, if we're gonna get there's a time constraint, but when you said that you have adjustments and you'll be presenting the adjustments for the new testing, if we could include Mugget and the others all the way down to Richardson Corner and how, because it gets pretty bad during the day. You can't, I've sat there for 10 minutes and not been able to get out of Freeman or Bond. And again, I'm telling you because I'm a local person and I use the roads daily.
Can I comment? One thing to keep in mind is even if, whether their distribution is exactly right, or if you're right and you think, double what they are estimating is coming to and from Morton Station, what is more important from the, for the safety of all of the traveling public is, can they mitigate the situation that's out there? Can they make it a safer intersection? Whether it's 10 cars in an hour that they're adding to it, or if it's 20 commuters coming that way. Regardless of the number of cars that will be making those turns, it's can we get those cars to do it safely? And that's really going to be the question, is there are some deficiencies. Can they convince the board that they can address those deficiencies and make both Morton Station and Alterna have safe access?
Question on that, do you think that, and I don't know the official term, but painting Morton Station, if you will, and putting the line, would that help? Because I know right now that is an awful, awful road. All the kids from Bay Path are cutting through. You've got a ton of new drivers on that. You've got people going to the schools. You've got, it's just,
And
it's
people do
poorly-
definitely cut that corner. I mean,
Yes.
obviously you guys know that better than I do from just driving through it a couple of times. But yes, obviously people are cutting that corner. I'm not shocked that that's what the
Agreed.
investigation into those crashes say. What Rebecca's gonna have to look into is, even if they do stripe it, can the driver see that striping? Because if the driver can see that striping, they do tend to,
Yes.
they might still cross over it a little bit, but they tend to try to obey it a little bit more. And it also provides the guidance to the person coming up the hill
Yes.
where they should be. And it does organize the traffic, but if because of the grade, those two drivers can't see those pavement markings, it doesn't provide you the improvement you're looking for. So, I mean, that's what she'll be looking into is what can be done and what can be done that then the drivers in both directions can see it.
Yeah, and that is one of the things that we did notice on Morton Station Road, is that the stop line is set back
Yes.
about 13, 14 feet from the edge of the travelway. So as you're coming around Old Worcester Road, you can't see it. It's dipped down pretty far and you don't see it at all. And it looks like a pretty natural movement to just whip around that
Yes.
corner and cross over what would be the center line, but there is no center line.
Exactly.
So moving that stop line up a little bit, striping an actual center line for maybe only 20 feet or so, just to clearly indicate that vehicles need to be on that opposite side of the road, can help a lot for just guiding people around that
I would completely
intersection.
agree, yes. Thank you.
Striping line has big.
I have a question regarding the type of vehicles. Are you gonna be using tractor trailers in your normal deliveries or shipments going out? Are we talking like a 40-foot, 45-foot, 55-foot tractor trailer?
Yes,
That's a
yes,
question.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I just want to wait till you're done with the
Yeah.
question. We are, so in our report, we've estimated, we believe conservatively, a maximum of 10 tractor trailers, 40-foot tractor trailers on a daily basis could be coming to the site.
Coming into.
Coming in,
Well,
well, making deliveries,
okay.
making inbound shipments, and we think that's the worst case scenario, because on a daily basis, we don't see that happening. But that's assuming the worst cases on a daily basis. And then as far as outbound traffic, outgoing deliveries are made in vans. They're not semi-trailers.
And approximately how many of those a day?
We've estimated up to 20, 10 to 20 deliveries per day. Again, we've conservative, out of this facility. And that was accounted for with the traffic study.
The other question I had was, somebody, I think it was Jennifer, referred to Old Worcester Road as a two-lane road. I really question that. I don't really think it's a two-lane road. If it is, it's awfully tight. And especially if you're gonna have tractor trailers coming down there, it's definitely not a two-lane road. I don't think you're gonna be anticipating widening that at all, or are you? Old Worcester Road?
Yeah, we haven't anticipated widening it at all.
I can tell you with my vehicle in a school bus, I scratch the whole side of my vehicle going down that with a school bus. So a tractor trailer is about the same width.
Same size.
Yeah, so it's.
It's gonna be tight.
It's gonna be, it's definitely, I'm hitting the trees on the opposite side of the road.
And what are the times of your shifts? Do you know that now? And are these employees going to be your employees, or you're renting out spaces and it's going to be that person that's renting the spaces employees? How's that going to work? I mean, who's going to control the number of employees going in and coming out? Is it going to be VGG, or is it going to be?
Yes.
It will be?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So the total,
It will be the landlord,
this will be the,
which isn't necessarily VGG. VGG is our first operator.
Right.
But the landlord is going to establish, almost like a condo association,
Exactly.
your rules and regulations.
Yes.
So the applicant is VGG, they're the first tenant in the building, but everyone will have to adhere to the rules and regulations,
That
which
you
I
set?
presume will include the planning board conditions that are imposed. Rule number 1 will be, you must adhere to the planning board requirements. So we'll set, so Dan, if you want to explain patterns and shifts and so forth. But it's, the landlord's going to own the building, the landlord is going to lease it to tenants, the first tenant of which will be VGG.
Okay.
so that, I think that answers the second question. I think the first question was how many and what are the shifts?
Right. Is that designated yet or not, or?
Yeah, so for,
Can walk through that?
yeah, Rebecca, so for our updated study, we provided that detail, and that's, maybe Rebecca could provide that.
Yeah, so in our updated study, we did an updated trip generation analysis too, that we went through all the different shift times that are actually anticipated. When the original study was done, we didn't know what the shift times would be. We just knew that there would be 2 shifts, so we assumed that those shifts would turn over at the peak hours and that there would be half of the employees total in each shift. So now we have some more detailed information. There's gonna be a total of 4 shifts for the actual, the cultivation component of the site, and then there'll be a separate shift for administrative type tasks as well for the office. So there will be 2 shifts that will have roughly 80 employees on those shifts that will operate from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. and then 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. Then there will also be 2 shifts that will have about 50 people that will operate from roughly 6:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. and then from 2:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. And part of the reason that those time periods were selected was to avoid too much activity in the nighttime, obviously, so that the site is relatively quiet at nighttime, but also to avoid the school peak periods. So the nearby schools operate, the high schools and middle schools operate from 7:40 a.m. to 2:10 p.m. So we wanted to make sure that our traffic was in before all the morning activity happens, and then the first shift is leaving before all the activity happens on the school site. The second shift of people will still come in before all the school traffic happens, but they will go out and change over in between the peak hour for the middle and high schools and the elementary school, which doesn't get out until 3:05. So we'd be letting out our employees around 2:30, and the new employees would be coming in at that time, and then everyone would be off the site. There's expected to be about 35 to 40 administrative staff that would be coming in for that midday shift. That would be roughly 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., somewhere in that range. And then there would be approximately, or up to 5 overnight security people that would be coming in around 10 and then leaving around 5 or 6 in the morning. So there again would change over outside of the peak hours. So we did do updated trip generation analysis based on all of this information, like I mentioned. Also, we have more detailed information about the deliveries than what we had previously, which some of that information was just outlined, and approximate times that those deliveries would likely occur. So those inbound deliveries would probably occur between 6 a.m. and noon time. And those are that 40 tractor trailer trucks that, or excuse me, 10 40-foot tractor trailer trucks, not 40 trucks. Don't want to scare anyone. And then the outbound deliveries would be leaving the site between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. roughly. And that's that up to 20 outbound deliveries in a day. So based on all of this turnover, we'd be expecting roughly 90 trips total in the morning peak, and that's the morning peak of our site-generated traffic, not the adjacent street traffic, where 85 of those would be coming in for that first shift, 5 people going out from the overnight security, and then approximately 166 trips in the PM peak hour and the Saturday peak hour, which would be roughly 83 trips coming in, 83 trips going out during that changeover of the varying shifts. So in our updated analysis, we've assumed that those shifts would occur during the morning peak hour and the evening peak hour of the adjacent street traffic, even though we know that they won't. We intend for those to occur much, much earlier in the day, but just to provide a worst case condition of what the traffic impacts would be, we've superimposed those on top of the adjacent street traffic to estimate those impacts. And I can show you, if you want to see it, kind of roughly where we anticipate the vehicles will be going, which roads.
Presentation, are you gonna give us all this?
What was that?
You are going to do another study.
Yeah,
You
so
have
with
that
the updated
information?
one, we will show,
Right.
we
Why
will have that
don't we wait until
information.
we get it
We
all?
have estimated, based on the comments that we got from the peer review, where we anticipate people will go. We did adjust the trip distribution that we had in the previous study based on comments from the peer review.
You have that information
Although,
now?
we do, so I can show that to you
Sure,
now,
yeah.
if you'd be interested in seeing that now.
Although based on board comments, it may
It
not
may
be-
swing back the other way.
It may swing back the other way.
So one of the comments that was received was actually that we had applied too much traffic on Morton Station Road and Old Worcester Road for some of the more local trips, from Charlton-based trips. But it sounds like from comments that we heard today that maybe that it should actually go back the other direction. But so this is kind of roughly what we were assuming. These arrows are kind of each of the points where we looked at what traffic volume increases would look like. So on most of the study area roadways, you see about a 1 to 2.5% increase in site-generated traffic, where we're talking about along North Main Street, increases of between 13 and 25 vehicles during that peak hour, which is about a 2.5 to 4% increase on that location. On Center Depot Road, we're looking at 4 to 8 additional vehicle trips during the peak hour, which is an increase of 1 to 2.5%. Similar increase on Carroll Hill Road as well. And then coming down Morton Station Road, also about a 13 to 25 vehicle increase on Morton Station Road, which is about a 6 to 16%. So that one has the highest percentage increase because Morton Station Road is such a low volume roadway today. And then along Route 20, we're looking at increases of about 25 to 50 trips in the peak hour in either direction, which is about 1.5 to 2.5% increase on each of those study area roadways. That's kind of where traffic is looking at right now for those peak hours.
And you did say 6 days a week?
For operations?
Yes,
I believe it's
7 days.
a week.
7 days a week.
Yes, ma'am.
And do we have an approximate, or it should be to the point maybe where we could zero in a little bit on the number of employees that are gonna be there? Is it still the 300 that you were originally?
Yes, ma'am, a total of 300, but I think maybe your question might be, what's the maximum that are gonna be on the site during a shift at any given time? Or,
No, I was just looking for total number.
no, total number is 300.
Right around.
What was the maximum per shift? I heard about 90.
Yep, so the highest shift would have 80, but there will be 2 shifts that'll be on the site at one time for the cultivation component, which would total 130 people, and then you'd have about 35 additional administrative staff that could be on the site. So 165 would be the total number of people that would be on site at once.
And I just have one last thing to say. Oh, you had mentioned in your presentation, I heard that you had said 3 or fewer accidents. I thought you said per year, or is that for every 5 years?
Per year.
Per year, okay. I did hear you right. And my very last comment is, we all know what happened with Treehouse. Okay, we had studies from, traffic studies for Treehouse, which is fairly new to town. The volume of traffic created was nowhere near, the projections were nowhere near the amount of traffic. They were so underestimated. And I, as a planning board member, don't want to go through that again.
And 508.
And 508.
So we have a very bad record incorrectly, and we've went the same deal, and a review process, and we were so off. So that's why I think we all sit here with big doubts in our mind going, okay, so add 20% to everything, because unfortunately we're
And I think the one big difference is they're not customer based, they're
I
employee
was
based.
just
So
gonna ask
they're
you
not
that
gonna have
question.
General
people
public.
coming in.
That overflow is, so
It's not
we meet at
employees, right?
Zorba's, and I sit and I watch the traffic go in and out at Treehouse. And I presume it is consumers going to
Yes.
purchase and turn around and leave. So I think taking the dispensary portion out of this, I think statistically is gonna have us
More
right in
control.
on the numbers that we've zoomed in on. So I do think that is a difference between, say, Treehouse and what we're doing now versus what we had originally proposed and what the original traffic study was based on.
I mean, we've seen 20, because during any holiday, any long weekend, any weekend, you can't use 20 at all. It's absolutely stopped. Nobody can, we've all seen it. You can't even get, I can't even get home. I'm coming from Boston, and I have to take another exit further and go all the way around to get home, because 20 is pretty much stopped. So the traffic, any additional traffic going on over to 20 is, they're not gonna be able to get out on the weekends. Say Friday, Thursday, after, they're not gonna be able to get out on the 20, so it's gonna, I'm just saying for future traffic studies, people are gonna be sitting on waiting to get out onto 20, and they won't be able to get out. Lights and lights and lights. I've sat there 3 or 4 lights before I got out. And I'm just, again, saying this so it's consideration for people, and I'm sure everybody will agree with me on how bad it gets for fall, spring, it's horrible. It's very, very bad. Mike, do you have a question?
John's got one. Yeah, I have one more question for Officer Dodd. I noticed that the accident data is Old Worcester Road, Morton Station. Anything on Morton Station and Mugget, or Mugget and Oxford Road?
We included all of Morton Station. So
All of
anything
it.
that that intersected with Morton Station, both ends.
Both ends, okay.
Was included in that, and there were only 2 in a 5-year period.
Okay.
So, again, I don't have the data in front of me to say, you know, could there have been other fender benders that
Yeah,
weren't
sure,
reported?
sure.
Certainly. No, I could tell you there were no serious injuries resulting from those accidents, but nonetheless, there were 2 recorded accidents.
Sure, I know it's a tight spot to get it in and out of at any time. Okay, thank you.
Do we want to open? Right, so we'll open it up to the public. Please keep all questions traffic only, so we can. Please state your name and address.
Madam Chairman, Gerard Russell, 63 Old Worcester Road. I have a couple of major points to make. First is, I think the study is lacking in that it doesn't look at the stacking of vehicles, of employees leaving and coming. Those leaving who would be exiting onto Route 20, or exiting Old Worcester Road and onto Route 20. The stacking component that will probably be significant. That's not in the study. And also, probably even the bigger hazard would be employees arriving using Route 20 to turn left onto Old Worcester Road. The lane off of, or on Route 20, so you can take that left-hand turn, is probably capable of holding maybe 5 or 6 vehicles, and that's it. And I think Mass Highway probably needs to weigh in on this as what kind of options need to be studied with regard to changes on Route 20 or another entrance. That's one of my questions regarding why no stacking study by the developer.
Is that a normal thing is that a standard thing? Stacking?
Guys, the chair has asked for a backup.
Is that a standard thing, is a stacking study? And that's what I was getting to with that pulling out, where sometimes I just avoid that. Sometimes there's 4 or 5 or 6 cars waiting to turn onto Old Worcester Road on Route 20, and now you're in the fast lane, because if you're behind those cars, and you actually sit there and say, you hope that someone doesn't not see you and hit you. It's kind of scary sometimes. So that's something that probably should be added to the study, and I'm not sure if.
Yeah, so the study that we did does include an analysis of the delays and the queues on all approaches and in each lane of those study area intersections that I pointed out originally. So that does include the Route 20 and Old Worcester Street intersection. We haven't updated that analysis yet with the new information, but we did note that especially in the Saturday condition, that there was a long queue and long delays for that westbound left turn that was just mentioned. So we have made some recommendations in the original study, which we'll continue to make for some signal timing improvements there to help with that westbound left turn lane. And obviously those would have to be reviewed by Mass DOT, as was mentioned,
Have you
because
had
that
any
is state-owned.
preliminary conversations with Mass DOT on that matter?
We have not yet on the signal timing.
And just to see if they're even open to it.
Madam Chairman, the report by the developer, at least I didn't see it, it doesn't address the construction traffic that will be generated during this process. Our engineer, Ed Kochland, who couldn't be here tonight, estimates the concrete floor alone will require 25,000 cubic yards of concrete just for the floor. And that means 4,600 concrete trucks will have to go through the neighborhood. That's 2,300 in, 2,300 out. And that's just for the concrete floor. The foundation walls, the footings, the walls for the buildings, sidewalks, et cetera, that is going to be considerably more. Why doesn't the developer's plan address the construction traffic?
Please.
Yep, so typically we don't look at construction period impacts for these types of traffic studies. We're looking at long-term impacts of what the site would generate over an extended period of time once it's actually open. In some cases, we can look at those construction period impacts if they're anticipated to be significant. As far as the number of trucks, I can't tell you how accurate that is, we haven't looked at that yet, but typically what would be required is just the once the project is open, those long-term impacts.
Can I have a question on that after?
Jerry, do you think that Old Worcester Road will be able to handle that? I mean, it's a very big building. We can assume that there's going to be a lot of concrete trucks going in there, a lot of construction vehicles. Do you think that the road itself will be able to handle that kind of traffic? Safety issues, just
Well, by the question of handling is kind of vague. A lot of our roads can't handle what it has now, based on the way they've been built and whatnot. I think it's a fair way to look at it from the company's point of view when they're doing a traffic study, that they wouldn't include the construction phase of the project in that study. I think it's, I don't want to use the word fair or unfair. It all depends where you sit on it. But basically, can the road handle it? In my view, the concrete company, if we're going to talk about them specifically, they're going to come off of Route 20. They're going to travel up to Old Worcester Road and turn into the project. All the companies that I know of come from that direction. That's getting carried away in my views probably.
The
I really think the
infrastructure-
impact will be minimal.
Infrastructure of the road will be fine. It'll be able to handle the.
You know, the integrity of the road is here and there. You know, that's where our roads are.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna have an improvement through the water project. I think that's gonna help. That'll be soon. It may be impacted by this project because I don't know the timing of it. That's where I would say, I'm not real crazy about the idea of newly paved roads getting hammered by all these construction type, for the building of the project. But then again, we build the road to the best we can for the money we have. The project is gonna put a nice road in there, it's gonna put, but in my view, it'll probably handle it, and they have a right to travel over these roads, but the timing of it is really something I'd like to see considered. It's like the intersection at one station in Old Worcester seems to be a point of something they want to bring up and improve. I'm all for an improvement of that intersection. Some of the basic, quick things I would think about down there would be a three-way stop. I mean, I think that would go a long ways to at least help, eliminate the crashes. Is it gonna make people stay to the right when they make the turn on the Morton Station? No, it's not. You wanna make that a safer turn? Let's look at the grade going on the Morton Station off of Old Worcester Road. I think that would help greatly. If that's gonna be done, that needs to be in conjunction with the engineers that are designing or have designed new utilities.
Jerry, all these comments, can you shoot over an email or do a memo so we have it on?
Sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, the game's on anyway, so.
Thank you.
you have 4 minutes.
I want to
You
make
have
sure
4 more
that we
minutes.
have, when we're able to do conditions and stuff, we want to make sure that we have some of that in writing so we can make sure that we don't miss that.
Yeah, it's just natural for me to sit here and listen to this, and now things are popping in. And, I wasn't this surprised to the project, and they're still planning apparently, but, I may have input on that also, so.
No, you do. Thank you so much.
I'll try to stay involved more.
Madam Chairman, just one last question. I walk the road every day. Jerry, I see you drive by in your red truck. I'm very familiar with the degradation of that road right now. The water underneath, the erosion, it's breaking the road apart. And it was paved probably in the last maybe 10 years. So it was in great shape. It's not now. It's degraded. And in the interest of the town and the finances of the town, shouldn't a assessment be made of the road before the project begins and have the developer post a line of credit, so if there is damage to the road, the developer will cover that? Thank you.
Do you have a question?
I do. How long do you anticipate the construction period to last?
Ma'am, we are, we're anticipating upwards of a year.
That's what I figured.
To make a long story very short, upwards of a year.
Is the build-out gonna happen all at once, or are you gonna do it in phases? You're gonna do 2 greenhouses, then you're gonna do 2 more, and then you're gonna do 2 more, or is it all happening all at once?
Yes, sir, it'd be done in phases or in steps, or release portions of the project to be coordinated with the building department.
Dan, in that 1 year, can you just explain, portion is site work, portion is project construction, all the site work would take place, and portions of the project construction?
Yeah, so the site work and the site development would be the first thing to get started, and that would happen, and that would, you know, there's 4 to 5 months of work just to do there. And then the greenhouse is put up one at a time. We have another function which is called the head house, or where the processing, this is where the employees work. That gets built very early on to support the greenhouses as they come online, as the market develops for that. And cogeneration is happening in parallel with all of this.
So the greenhouses are not gonna be built at the same time, you're gonna add those as business picks up? Is that what I'm understanding?
More staged. We have an anticipated schedule for, the greenhouses don't all show up on the same boat
Sure,
and
sure,
come right to
understood.
port, yeah. But they come in, they get set up.
But it's not something you're gonna do 2 this year, you're gonna do 2 more next year, and
No, sir, it's,
one, and then.
the full project would be built out within 12, I believe 18 months on the long end.
I do have a question. Steve Coronas, 17 Worcester Road. I've got a few questions, but first of all, I think we were brought here tonight for a traffic study. And I know this is a fast-track project now, and the planning board is being dealt with. They have to make a decision by December 4th or something, early December. So we didn't really get a full traffic study. We got a preliminary one tonight, I guess, because there's a lot of other questions, answers you're gonna come back to us with another full-blown traffic study. Am I understanding that correct?
So I guess,
Yeah, so we'll be updating the traffic study with the information that we presented today, that addresses the comments that we received from the peer review.
When do
Okay,
you
and
expect to receive that?
I live on that road, and I drive on that road quite often, and listening to your, you can put up cameras, you can put up sensors, you can track traffic, but it's the quality of the traffic and what is the traffic. So in the morning, when you're taking a left onto Morton Station Road off of Old Worcester Road, when you're talking about extending the yellow line, that's a school bus doing that. Probably 20 school buses. It might show up as one blip on your little camera that you set up, but it's the quality of the traffic that's concerning. In the wintertime, when there are snowbanks, you can't pass another car on Old Worcester Road without stopping on the right. You just can't do it. Everybody has to stop. The Saturday morning traffic, again, for you guys for setting up a camera, would be a blip on the screen. Saturday morning traffic is soccer, baseball, going to Bond Road, going to our athletic fields, going to the middle school. It's all kid traffic. That's, if you see a spike on a Saturday, why would you see that in Charlotte? It's heading to the schools and the sports. That's where they're going. So, I guess that part needs to be put into your traffic study, probably a little more well thought out. It's not just a blip on the screen, it's the quality of the traffic that's on that road and what it is. I bet every given morning, I bet there were 15 school buses that go down, 15, 20, that go down North Station Road.
Oh, there's probably more.
Probably more. And Jerry had pointed out earlier, it's a feeder road to a main road. It's not Old Worcester Road is a feeder road to Center Depot Road and Mugget Hill Road. It's not a main traffic road, and you guys are trying to make it that way. If I were an employee at VGG and I sat on Route 20 trying to take a left onto Old Worcester Road, after 2 or 3 days of being backed up 10 cars, I would take Richardson Corner Road. And I would go back down around that way. So I really believe that traffic study needs to be widened to that part. And there's actually a selectman in town who recused himself from this very topic, because he lives out in that area, and he knew that traffic was gonna be going down that road. No one's gonna sit in a line of, if you know there's a line of 20 cars in front of you at 7:30 in the morning with school buses and everything else, you're gonna take that first left.
Swear to God, you do
Automatic door. So-
just for the record.
So I,
You would just fix it in the room.
when you're talking small feeder roads, it's, you really have to expand that to what, people are gonna find a way around it.
I've asked them to expand the study down. We'll say it again at the end, but we want all that included.
And I did take notes, but I didn't get all the notes on the employees coming in at what time and went out. That seemed to be quite a high number. And 7 days a week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
June Ellen Cloutier, I live on Freeman Road. I just had a quick, I guess not question, but comment. I did catch some of the employee times, and there was mention of 2:30 being one of the times to avoid school. I don't know, the last time I was an hourly employee, I didn't show up at 2:29 or 2:30, thinking it's gonna be closer to 2:20. School buses are leaving at 2:20, so that seems like a horrible timing. So my simple recommendation would be to change that. That sounds terrible. And you can go to the middle school, be there at 2:30, try to be a parent who's picking up, see all those buses go out, see all those parents. And the parents are there picking up because they have places to go, dentist appointments, doctors, whatnot, a lot of traffic. So 2:30 sounds like a horrible idea. So quick little recommendation.
I just want to point out that both the traffic consultants for BGG and the peer review, did you guys both use land use code 140 for your analysis, the manufacturing code?
So we looked at that as a comparison, but what we actually used in the traffic study was the empirical data based on shift changes and all of that, because it was higher than what land use code 140 had estimated. So we didn't want to use something that was lower when we already knew based on employee
Your
trips. that
tables
it would be
reference
more.
it, and the data pulled right from the ITE book. There's a reference right in your document. So land use code 140, which I just want to make for the record, everybody know that is manufacturing use. I also want to point out that the traffic study appears to account for employee traffic, but it doesn't really account for delivery traffic. And usually, when you estimate delivery traffic from an manufacturing facility, you use gross floor area, because that is warehousing space. Now, in the case of all the other cultivators in Central Mass, they did use land use code 140 also. Like in the case of Cultivate in Leicester, you can easily find their traffic study online and see that the gross floor area of 2,500 square feet, which is how big their cultivation is, was used to project the traffic. They don't appear to have any problems there. So I just want to point that out. I also want to point out in the study, the WRTA bus schedule was included. The WRTA bus stops at Masonic Home. As far as I know, that's as close as it gets to BGG. So are you guys anticipating that your employees are going to walk from the Masonic Home down North Main onto Old Worcester? If they take, I don't know why the bus schedule was included. Was it for employee use? So if that were the case, if you did have the expectation that people would be walking from the bus stop to the facility, you'd probably want to consider some sidewalks. We don't have any sidewalks along that way. I'd also like to point out that I live at the intersection, or close to it anyway, that's going to be ranked the big fat F because of this. So, and so does Jerry, and so does Julie, and so does she, and so do they. So I want to point out that most of the towns west of here have banned marijuana. And so I don't think you'll be doing a lot of deliveries in that direction. Everybody's gonna be headed to Worcester. And the biggest cut through to Worcester is to go down Carroll Hill and Hammond Hill Road to get on Stafford Street and head into Worcester. Now, are any of the traffic consultants from the area? Do they not know about the cut through to Worcester? Because that cut through to Worcester is the way all your vans are going to go. And it didn't have any impact analysis done whatsoever. So I'd like to please ask that you might take a gander at Carroll Hill Road and Hammond Hill Road and the traffic that lands on Stafford Street. Because that will be your super highway to Worcester, where all of your product will go to market. Thank you.
We can, there's a possibility to make that a condition where they would not be able to take that cut through to protect those residents up there. How it would be monitored, I mean, that would be, residents in our.
Just pointing out, there's not a lot of places west to sell this product.
If I can also comment, the delivery trips are really a minor piece of the number of trips. The bigger impact of trips at this location is the number of employees. And so their geographic sphere is bigger than, what's being suggested for the deliveries. And again, I'm not weighing in on that. I don't know which communities allow it or don't allow it. I'm just saying that, people from any community can work here.
We were told between 10 and 20
if
deliveries per day, which is actually between 20 and 40 trips per day.
Let me just, so is it true that the other traffic studies done by other marijuana cultivators in other towns use the manufacturing 140 schedule and we didn't use that?
I can't speak to what other people have used, but in the two other ones that we've done, we have not used the manufacturing land use
Well,
delivery.
as Rebecca pointed out, she did provide the data for the manufacturing land use code in here, but it was a lower trip generation during those peak hours. So she can obviously lower her estimate, but I don't see how that serves the town. Truly, the number of trips in and out, we can keep debating, should they be higher, should they be lower, should they go to Carroll Hill, should they go to other streets? But the number of trips at the intersections right in this immediate area aren't going to change the operation, aren't going to create either a safe road or a less safe road. I don't think, we can certainly, we could have them test twice as many trips, twice as far. They could go through the exercise, but I don't know that it's going to give the planning board either a smoking gun to turn it down or kumbaya, yay, let's have it. No matter what the number is, there's still gonna be this back and forth. There's still gonna be, there's a certain number of trips and the roads are difficult. And, the board is still gonna struggle with those basic facts.
Just to correct something, I thought you said that deliveries were included in the counts?
The deliveries are included in the traffic study, absolutely.
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Deliveries to the site.
And
Deliveries of materials to the site, so the trucks would be bringing the
tractor
materials in
trailers.
and then leaving again, as well as outbound deliveries of the product
van.
going out.
It's included.
I didn't see the outbound delivery.
Yeah, nobody could find that.
Those are included in there, and we talked about that it's gonna be 10 to 20 trips per day for the outbound.
We look forward
Could you
to
send me
it.
the visual, please?
We saw zero.
I don't.
I read through it at least 3 times before, I couldn't find it at all.
It's mentioned in table 1 on page 6
Of her document?
of the traffic study that was online. The one they're gonna revise.
Revised?
There's a traffic study that was posted.
I know, I read it twice.
Yeah, it's on page 6, there's a table that talks about trips coming in and trips going out. Sorry.
So all the truck trips are talked about on page 13. Of the original study. They're broken down a little bit differently in the study that we're in the process of updating, where we talk specifically about, because this one goes into fertilizer and all the different
I saw
components.
that, yep.
So the updated study talks about inbound specifically and outbound delivery vehicles.
I saw the
So
inbound
there-
analysis, I just didn't see any outbound analysis, which was concerning to me, because manufacturing facilities sell products and product traffic is market, and I was trying to discern how the heck you're gonna get your product to market with no deliveries, no freight, how are you, you're saying vans, maybe 20 a day, so that's 40 trips
Correct.
to and from the site per day,
Yes.
on
Yep.
top of the employee traffic,
That is correct.
right?
And I promise this lady right here.
Hi, I'm Emery Laughlin, 59 Old Worcester Road. I'm a little concerned about living in a residential neighborhood on a backcountry road with 14 tractor trailer trucks coming up and down that street. Doesn't make sense. School buses, garbage pickups, snowbanks, noise.
Why was the 20 dropped, the 20 in and out?
Well, this is my next question.
You just wanted to make that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. We know. Yes, ma'am.
90 Old Worcester Road, and I live, there's a stream that goes between me and the apple orchard, and then there's a bridge. And what is the weight bearing on that bridge? Has anybody studied if these trucks coming in and out are gonna be able to handle, if that bridge is gonna be able to handle the weight? I personally have witnessed, I don't know how many accidents on that corner where cars have gone down into the gully, or they've hit the trees, or whatever, because that corner is very sharp. I worry for my grandchildren. I worry for my cats who are constantly crossing the roads. I worry for people trying to back out of my driveway. It's horrible. It's a horrible corner. And how, I mean, are these tractor trailers only gonna take a left out of the
Let me get your
apple
first,
orchard?
let me get your first question answered. Was any of the analysis, was the bridge weight, and the weight of vehicles, the weight of the trailer trucks in the bridge considered?
We missed the location she mentioned.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly where that stream is in relation to our site, but the trucks would be directed not to
It's
go
right
out
next
to the right.
right next to them. I mean, I could throw a rock and hit that property. 90 Worcester Road.
I think it's a culvert more than a bridge.
Culvert pipe, where it goes.
Yeah. something
So
like that.
we
Probably
could,
not even a bridge.
Probably not even, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
a
I
very
think
narrow
we're
bridge.
finding where she's
It's
talking about
not-
on here. It's
So-
to
okay,
the
I have to let the applicant answer the question.
Okay.
Just give me one second.
So it's to the west, we're
It's to the
directing
west.
tractor trailers out to the east.
So the tractor trailers will go out in the other direction, they won't go over.
Okay, and who is gonna ensure that when those tractor trailers come out, that they go to the left and not to the right? Or that they don't come down Route 20 and go down North Main Street and then come down Old Worcester Road? I mean, who's gonna, you know, where's the human perspective here where people decide to make their own routes to get there? Who's gonna be at that corner of the road saying, no, you're not supposed to go this way, you're supposed to go that way? You know, people are human, they're gonna go the way they wanna go, they're gonna go the quickest way they can. Who's gonna be in charge of making sure they follow the right route every single time?
Well, as the board itself, we can add a condition to make sure that happens.
You can sign it. Coming out of the driveway, right turn, left turn only.
The applicant could sign it, and the managing construction company would be.
Exactly. Yes, ma'am.
So, it's something that we have in our notes, and we'll make sure that we add that as a condition.
Okay.
Jerry?
I'd just like to put her at ease over that culvert. That is a culvert pipe that's due to be replaced in the water project that's going on with a low profile concrete culvert.
Yeah, but is
which
that
is gonna
weight
be-
bearing?
No, it's weight bearing, but it's not gonna be a weight limit on it.
But I know that, like, my husband's a tractor trailer driver, so I know, I hear all about it, all the time. I hear about the turns that they have to make and all that. How are they gonna do that without going into the gullies that are, I mean, that's a big truck to turn on such a sharp left-hand turn. That's like, so easy to get
They
stuck.
have license and insurance, so that's what I can say.
It's not the answer you want to hear, but
I know.
we can't
That's not
control
something
how
that
they drive their
we can
trucks.
control at all. Do I have another question?
Ken Howard, what?
It's fine.
Sorry.
I'll get
Ken Howard, 181 Old Worcester Road. I've got a few questions and a few concerns, I guess. One of them, not to reiterate what Steve said, but when you guys do these traffic counts on the vehicles, do they differentiate between the amount of trucks and cars, or is it just vehicles that go over that rubber hose? I've been home, I've been in my house since 1989. I've been home for the last 16 years during the day. So I'm always there. And the amount of trash trucks, because we have God knows how many trash companies in this town, Burlingame Construction, Robbins Greenhouses in Oxford, Hilka, all those trucks use my street because they don't want to climb the hill by Bay Path. So you got all those trucks. One day it was about 2 weeks ago. Some days are low, some days are high. One day, a week or two ago, I don't know what was going on, but I counted roughly about 25 trucks, because I was out in my garage working, go by my house. They don't come up the street, they all go down because they don't want to climb that hill. So that's just something to consider with the amount of traffic that's going to increase on Old Worcester Road, plus the amount of trailer trucks, having these large trucks, you know, that are there. The other thing I haven't heard any mention of is, you talk about the coming and going when these shifts start and end. Where are all these people gonna go when it's lunchtime for each shift? And what's that gonna do to the center of town and the traffic coming down Masonic Hill Road? Where are they gonna go to eat? There's nothing to the east. They're gonna go to McDonald's, the pizza places downtown, so I figure when they get done, they're gonna be throwing the Big Mac junk in my front yard on the way back. It sounds funny, but I'm worried about the trash, and I'm worried about what the whole impact study is gonna do to the center of town if all these employees, I mean, I'm sure there's some people that are gonna sit in their car or bring their bag lunch, but there's a lot of people that are gonna buzz down to Sunny's store to get their scratch tickets or their cigarettes, or, you know, there's gonna be other areas impacted. You know, the red light down the bottom of Masonic Hill by the other green gold place, you know, without bringing that into it. I think there's a lot that's gonna be impacted
We
besides.
have asked to extend the study, so we will get more of the road analyzed. And I have written as for discussion after. I just found out today that we did a community impact study for all the solar issues that we have, and I think we're gonna put together, however we do it in this town, I want a community impact study, and that could help answer the trash questions. I assume that that's the kind of stuff they look at, so we'll hopefully answer those kind of questions. I know that the applicant won't be able to answer the trash questions and stuff. Maybe he can.
Just to add something, ma'am, that, so this facility, by the nature of its operation, employees come into the facility, they'll go into locker rooms, they'll get changed into operating clothes, which is not what we're wearing here tonight. They'll stay in that building all day long. There's a cafeteria, there's employee centers. They don't leave for lunch. Everything is very carefully maintained, and when they come back out in the evening, they go through the reverse process or whenever their shift ends. That's the nature of this type of operation.
I know I was gonna mention there was, I don't know if it got stolen or what, but I remember years ago, when you turn down Old Worcester Road from the center of town, there used to be a load limit sign. It was back years ago when I had a large flatbed truck, there was a load limit sign right there for how many tons could go on Old Worcester Road. I don't remember if it said 10 tons or 12 tons, and that sign's been gone for years, and I never asked anybody why it disappeared, but it disappeared.
Is that a posted road, Jerry?
Not
Posted
anymore.
road? There's no posted road?
It is now.
Yeah.
But that will be taken care of, sure.
Okay.
I don't believe it's a post.
Okay.
Yeah. 'Cause I know I've been there since '89. Out of the last 20 years, except for the last 3, I've walked my dog, I don't know how many times, dogs, up and down that street. The last 2 or 3 years, we haven't had a dog. And it's dangerous walking a dog on that street the way it is now. Never mind after all this comes into play. Another thing I was a little concerned about, just as far as you don't want anybody to get hurt, there's a funeral home next to my house, and occasionally there's large funerals over there. They're not every day. I know sometimes they're not every week, but there are decent-sized funerals there, and the people park in front of my house, they park across from my house, all the way down to the neighbor's house, all the way down to Carpentier's lot. So you got vehicles on both sides of the road, and that just kind of comes into play with, if that's going on during one of these shift changes, and a funeral can be, you know, they can be there at 10 in the morning, they can be there at 2, they can be there at 8 at night. It's just something else to consider.
Thank you. I mean, it's one more reason, and you know the board obviously is listening to all of this, so we could better decide on whether Route 20 access is really necessary for the community. So I know no one wants to really hear all the stories, but it does help us decide on the need of the road. So next question. Sir. Yep, perfect, yeah.
Clark Conti, I live at 43 Morton Station Road. And yes, I do use that intersection at a minimum of twice a day, from Morton Station onto Old Worcester Road. In the traffic studies, there were speed studies. Did that include Morton Station Road, or was that simply Old Worcester Road?
That was just on Old Worcester Road.
So
to
you
look
haven't
at
done a
what
traffic,
the-
speed
the
study on?
sightlines were.
And does the plan include any kind of improvements to Morton Station Road? As you'll attest, it's been a while since it's been more than patches on top of patches on the potholes.
So,
Does the plan include any widening or resurfacing of Morton Station Road?
as of right now, it does not include any widening or overlay on Morton Station. We're just looking at the intersection of Old Worcester and Morton Station that I mentioned earlier to address the.
I agree with Tricia that the traffic down Old Morton Station Road, I think, is very much underestimated. Between school buses, Burlingame, sand trucks, trash trucks, everything else. I would hope that if there was another traffic study, that it would include that area and that people would pay attention to it, because, like you say, everybody who doesn't want to go all the way up the hill past here and around cuts through Morton Station Road. And it's from the high school end.
Thank you.
Hi, Brett Moore, 15 Hammerock Road. And I forgot your name, but you did a great job, thank you very much. And about the safety thing, I live on Hammerock Road, and that line of sight, do you think about that at all? Because I know there's been a tractor trailer rolled over right on that corner, Elliot's excavator, about 5 years ago. And I don't think I can see more than 30 feet if I'm turning left to go to the center of town.
Yeah, I had driven by there.
And I got 3 kids that drive on that. We come out there, we've been clipped many times, either pulling into Hammerock or pulling out.
Understood. No, I can see how that would be. I didn't personally look at it and didn't direct in my comments any comments about it, just based on the way the distribution was in the number of trips that are anticipated to not travel past there. Most of them primarily, the 2 points that are the most dangerous, that most of the traffic will pass by, are the ones that I called the attention to.
Right, well, once again, like this young lady pointed out, depending on if they're going to Worcester, they're gonna go right by that road every day. So that would be my first question that you might want to start to think about. Maybe they need to figure out how they're gonna deal with that whole line of sight thing, because there is no line of sight. It's from here to that TV, literally. That would be my first question. The young lady right in front of me, I forgot your name, so I'm sorry.
Rebecca Brown.
You talked about maybe cutting back some of the shrubbery there and putting the line at Morton Station Road. Who's gonna maintain that next year? Is VGG gonna cut that back every year? Because I know Jerry can't keep up with what you've got now. You're not gonna be able to whack that hillside down.
Yeah, so the area that we're talking about regrading and cutting back the vegetation would be on the site. So that would be regularly maintained by DPW.
Okay, so that's, well, they'll figure that out. So, all these estimates, I know when I went to my first VGG meeting, and they had the thing in the cafeteria at the middle school with all the pictures and all that, they said that this facility was gonna be between 1 and 3 million square feet. Are these estimates, like the 20 trucks and all that, is that based on a 1 million square foot facility? Is it based on a 2 million square foot facility, a 3 million square foot facility?
So when we originally designed the site, we had not laid out fully lot coverage ratios and some of the other relief that might be needed from the zoning board. So the numbers now are based on a 25% lot coverage. The greenhouse is laid out on the site utilizing 25%, but no more. Originally, we had contemplated putting a dispensary on Route 20. So what you saw in the original meeting was based on those original plans.
Okay.
This has all been revised based on feedback from meetings, Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, site study and analysis by our engineers, and as we developed and evolved the plan more, we're updating it, but this is the plan that uses the site that we're proposing, that we're seeking the board to approve. This is the project we're moving forward with.
Okay, so what does that, so I'm just a dummy. What does that mean? Is it gonna be a 1 million square foot facility?
It's gonna be approximately 1 million square feet.
And there's no chance of building it out to 3 million?
No.
Okay. So that, okay, so that answers that question. Was there a big difference between what the police officer said about the accidents and what you came up with? Was there a huge difference? It seemed like there was a pretty good gap between the accidents he talked about and the accidents you talked about.
I haven't seen his detailed data on crashes, but it sounds like we're probably pretty close in line. Part of it
The
is,
time
they looked
periods
at
were
the
different.
entire length of Old Worcester Road and
He
the
had 2
entire
years.
length of Morton Station
They
Road.
did 5 years.
They did 5 years, but a different
Different
5 years
5
because they
years.
went up
Yeah.
to today's
2013, you,
date,
oh,
basically.
you did, okay.
Yeah, so it seems like it's right in line with what we had also had.
Then,
Typically, the local crash data is higher because not all crashes that are reported locally get sent to the state database if they're below a certain level.
okay.
So there tends to be a little bit of a difference.
Because I mean, I know myself, I pulled a few kids out on that same corner I was talking about, just out of the snowbank with my, you know, they end up in that snowbank, we don't report it as a crash.
Right, right.
But, you know, there's traffic and all that. And then the tractor trailers at 5:30 in the morning, was it 5:30 or 6 in the morning? I mean, I sit from my window up and I know what a tractor trailer sounds like. It's gonna be annoying on a Saturday morning or Sunday morning, or really any morning.
Or at 10:30 at night.
Yeah, I mean, that seems really odd to me. I don't know that we have noise rules in town, but that's loud. They're loud, and it's Charlton, I mean, I moved from San Francisco to Charlton because I like the quiet.
So it was 6 AM to noon.
Well, even 6 AM, I'm still in bed.
I mean, that is something that the board can consider conditioning.
If I could also point out, I think 10:30 at night is a pretty late time for, 80 people to be leaving the plant and driving by my driveway. Past my bedtime.
Well, I don't think there's been 80 cars on that road after 10 o'clock at night since I've lived here.
We will look further into shifts and see if there's a bet. I'm sure that you'll work with us shift-wise if we need to kind of move it an hour or whatever, either way to kind of, you'll, okay.
But that's all I got.
Yes, I'm,
Lois Shagru, and I live at 21 Brackett Hill Road. I just have a few comments. First of all, I am impacted coming down on Carroll Hill to 20. There is so many cars that go through the red lights, and not just cars, but somebody's. And it's every day. I mean, you could go down any time of the day, and you're going to see this happen. And our police, they do a good job, but they can't be there 24/7. So you have to be aware that this is an issue. I don't know how you bring that and study that, but it's happening. The other thing you can study is look at the pavement, and you're going to see the skid marks. And I know that this is a problem because those tractor trailers, they come up that hill headed east, and then they're coming down, and it's 55 miles an hour, and then there's the stoplight, and they're going through it, and they can't stop. So that's an issue. Also, with your study, I am curious to know if you are studying weather patterns, because my understanding is that when there's a street that says there's a hill in it, there really is a hill in it in Charlton. And you really do, like he was saying, I mean, there's probably a lot of people that get pulled out of these ditches, and my daughter was one. And it's not by AAA, it's by the nice guy down the street. This happens more than you think it does. Also, at Carroll Hill and 20 and Old Worcester Hill and 20, there's a situation, and I don't know, again, if the traffic people can study this, but it's not like a straight intersection. It's kind of offset. So when I go from Carroll Hill and I want to take a left, and I start and I'm midway through my turn, you've got people shooting out of Old Worcester Road and you almost get hit. Not only that, the lights are short, so maybe only 3 or 4 people can get through a light. That would be from Carroll Hill onto 20, also from 20 onto Carroll Hill. And I don't know, I don't go from the left onto Old Worcester Road from 20, but I think that's the same thing. So my fear is those people, you know, trying to go west, take a left, go onto Old Worcester Road, somebody's gonna get hit, because if you can only line up 4 or 5 cars and they're waiting for that light, and then they're also waiting for people to go through the red light, which they do, you're gonna have a heck of a backup. You really, those, I don't think you can, you know, you have to really sit there and live here to understand that. It's bad. It's worse than you think it is. And we did have a fatal on Morton Station.
Yes, we do.
And it was 2 boys going to Bay Pass School, and it was icy, and 1 was killed. That's a very narrow and rough road. I don't care what they say. Even when it's paved, unless it is widened, I think it's always going to be an issue. And I think it was Kristen was talking about, it sounds like you're thinking all these employees are going to come up from the south. They're going to come off of Stafford Road as well. And not only that, they may be coming up Center Depot, and I would like for you to look at those statistics of how many accidents at Center Depot and Stafford have occurred too. I think that you're going to find that there were quite a few, and I'm sure people will be employed coming from that direction. And also, I don't understand traffic either, but I know that in the summer, Friday noon, we have high, you know, if anything happens on the pike, we have a lot of backup on 20 that can go into the evening. Sunday, you can pretty much count on it. It's pretty regular, but it's something that you can't, you know, put a number on, I don't think. It just happens. If there's an accident, we get the traffic. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
And I just had one more thing.
Let me just have the other resident speak, and then I'll come back.
Okay, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And I know you said earlier that it's hard to collect data on this subject, but I actually found a lot of information from Colorado. And I don't know if Colorado, I mean, I assume our weather's about the same. A lot of the employees won't be driving cars all the time. They use, and there was actually a video, a documentary on the other night. What are we gonna do about that? If they're walking or riding a bicycle, you know, they take the bus and they get off the bus in the center. I think the only bus stop is in the center of town. What are we gonna do about those people that are gonna walk, or is that come into traffic, or is that safety? I don't know, but it was a high percentage of the employees at the one facility, and you can find the information online.
Interesting.
And what do you do about that stuff?
Do you actually have, do you have an answer to that? Do you think that, do you expect for your employees to be using the bus lines? Because Charlton and correct me, has 1 bus going through, and it stops where Masonic Home is, and that's quite a long ways.
And it starts in Southbridge, so it'll pick up people in Southbridge.
It picks up at the corner of Old Worcester Road.
And it also stops at CVS. It's a long walk, and we have no sidewalks.
I just gotta keep the volume down.
Yeah, I think like any employer, you encourage public transportation wherever possible, so if there's an opportunity that a lot of employees are using public transportation, maybe we get a shuttle bus to help them get to the site safely.
Because walking any road in Charlton, you're taking your life and you can't.
And this study that I'm referencing from Colorado said that they didn't plan for this. They didn't know that their employees weren't gonna use cars, but it just happens to be that was the demographic of the people that were hired in Colorado. It might be different here.
Would you happen to know what town that was in?
No, I don't, but if you want, I can email you that study.
If you send it to the board, and then she'll share it with us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that would be interesting to see.
So we'll look at that further and I mean, you'd want to keep your employees safe also, but truly the walking in this town is, it's a scary thing to do.
Sharon Moore, Gill Road. Interesting that he mentioned the word shuttle. Back in June, an interview with Dr. Goldstein in the Worcester Telegram, he went at some length about how the VGG was going to be looking to buy property on Route 20 and shuttle their employees in, which would eliminate a lot of traffic on Old Worcester Road. And then that just kind of went away. And now obviously with the site plan and everything, with 250 parking spaces, there's no intention to do that. What happened to that plan that he was so, if you read the Worcester article, he was very adamant that this is what they were going to do because they wanted to be good neighbors. What happened to that?
I'll answer the plan changed.
I know the plan changed, but why?
And this is what they proposed, so I don't,
Okay. So we contacted a number of property owners in the vicinity, and the purchase price for properties was 10 to 20-fold what those properties were valued, because people thought they could just hold Mr. Goldstein over a barrel and force them to spend millions of dollars on small parcels of land. Are we still looking? Yep. If the opportunity afforded itself, would we contemplate it? Certainly.
Yes, John Smith, 136 Dressel Hill Road. Is there anything from the board, from you guys, on putting a condition that the access to the site has to come off Route 20? Is there anything preventing you from doing that?
if we have reasonable support for that, we need to have a reason to do so. We can't just do it because we feel like it, but we have to take all of these comments, the roads, the traffic, and with that, the board would come to a conclusion on whether.
So it's an internal voting between you people?
It's also Mass DOT though.
Well, no, Mass
In
DOT
May.
has the authority to issue curb cuts onto Route 20,
We-
and we cannot control what Mass DOT would do. in terms of
Again,
that.
why hasn't that been in place by then? Why hasn't that option by then?
We've asked them, and they said they've contacted DOT and are
And it's really
exploring that
not
possibility.
our responsibility. If we say that's the condition, then that's what they need to do.
But
We
it's
don't
your
have-
responsibility to make it a safe environment for the people of the town to live in.
Right. Well aware, thank you. I'm working very hard on that.
Hi, Noreen Johnson-Smith. I live on Dresser Hill Road, and for the last 26 years, every year I watch the accidents take place right out in front of my house and around the corner. So I'm assuming anyone coming from the south is going to be traveling Dresser Hill Road to get up to the center of town to go to this site. So I would love to have some impact study done on Dresser Hill. We have no sidewalks. Our roads are in pretty good shape for the town of Charlton, but you know, they're also maintained by the state in part. And years ago, we tried to get sidewalks, and we were told that it was a rural community and people wanted to keep the rural character. So I think the same is true for all of these back roads. These are rural town roads. And I'll just add a comment to the developer. I grew up in a house of real estate developers. My father was a very large-scale real estate developer, and the number one thing he always said was, the most important person in this development is the neighbor. And he spent all of his time going door to door and handshaking and making sure that all of the neighbors' concerns were addressed first. And it wasn't just amendments to the plan for the town planning board or the board of selectmen or investors. It's the neighbors. And so if we're welcoming your business into our town as a long-term neighbor, I think the concerns of those who live in the direct vicinity need to be first and foremost in the minds of the planning board and in the minds of the developer. And that Route 20 access point needs to be worked on very quickly.
Hey,
just one more question, 90 Old Worcester Road. The, all of the demographics and all of the traffic control stuff that they've done so far, are those based on a neighborhood, or are they based on a industrial park? all of the site planning and all of that kind of stuff. This is going into a small neighborhood. And all this traffic study, is that based, all that traffic study, does it take in the fact that this is a neighborhood, not an industrial park, not an industrial highway or anything like that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not sure exactly how to respond to that question. In the traffic study, obviously, we've counted the volumes on the roadway, so it takes into account that those are low-volume roadways. We've measured the widths of the roadways, so all of the capacity analysis takes that into account. We've measured the sight lines, things like that, when we're looking at this. So yes, the analysis component of it does take into account. And I know it was brought up a couple of times about the types of vehicles that are on these roadways. So we don't just count how many vehicles and call it a day. We classify vehicles into 12 different categories of different, motorcycles, typical passenger cars, SUVs, pickup trucks, right up to tractor trailer trucks when we're doing these counts. And then we also look at if there are any pedestrian and bicycle volumes, buses, all of that gets included when we're doing these counts as well. So that's all factored in when we're running the analysis.
But does that include a country road, or do you use a different calculation when you're doing an industrial park?
Well, so the country road factor comes in terms of the width of the roadway and the volumes that are on it, the speed of the roadway, all of that component comes in, and the mix of vehicles on the road. On a country road, it's mostly passenger vehicles that would be present and not a lot of trucks. So all that gets factored in when we're looking at the study. In terms of the site-generated traffic, obviously we look at the number of truck trips that the site would generate and the number of employee trips that would be passenger vehicle type trips that are traveling on these roadways.
You should count the number of turkeys across that road every day.
That unfortunately is one of the things we go.
Your counters won't go that high.
Bill Borowski, 69 Happy Road. Logistically, you have less than 6 weeks, as of today, to conduct your impact study, to get updated numbers, to review those numbers, to have the peer review of those numbers. Additionally, one way or another, whether it's a secondary or primary egress onto Route 20 or other traffic concerns, it's going to be getting some information from Mass DOT to potentially construct any conditions you want. Now, I'm sure there's almost no appetite whatsoever for an extension from the developer. That would be excessive. What I would request is that potentially you have a discussion with the development team for a reasonable extension, just to get the information back to analyze, and most specifically for Mass DOT. We all realize how busy Mass DOT is. The reality is that it's not going to be back in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So you're going to be creating conditions, potentially, based upon hypotheses that Mass DOT may or may not agree to. If you could extend this out even another month, not to delay and be any type of a delay tactic, but rather to get better information from Mass DOT, I think it'd make a lot of the people in this room, in this town, feel a whole heck of a lot better. So again, I beseech the development team just to consider at least a 4-week extension, just to get additional information back from Mass DOT. And if Mass DOT comes back earlier than that, still vote on 12-3 or 12-4. But if you need that additional time from Mass DOT, I don't know why we wouldn't want that type of extension. So just something to think about.
I might make a suggestion to that end, because I would anticipate that the applicant would be hesitant at this point to create an extension. But it is certainly, the question could be asked, when do you think is a reasonable time that you could get something from Mass DOT or meet with Mass DOT and report back? And then, based on that, if that date is met, does then the planning board have enough time to make their decision before that date, or does an extension need to be met? Working kind of with where we are and where, how much time is left. If they think it'll take 3 weeks to have a conversation or exchange emails or to meet, or, whatever the date is that they think is reasonable, and it may or may not be met, but at least then, it kind of, instead of having all of the responsibility to be on the planning board to make a decision within the 6 weeks, it pushes some of the responsibility for at least some of that input that the planning board seems to want to a date before that so that the planning board could make that decision by that date.
And can I ask a piggyback question to that, because I do have a big question. From the very beginning of this project, the two biggest concerns that the entire town has seemed to have was odor and traffic. Traffic being the biggest one. It's the number one question I get asked all the time. And so I guess my question is, this project started weeks, months ago. What has been the hesitation to meeting with Mass DOT to get that curb cut onto Route 20 started? Because now we're at the final stages. I agree completely. There's no way we're going to get this done by the deadline. Why hasn't that been initiated yet?
It hasn't not been initiated
Okay.
yet. We haven't met with DOT yet. We're exploring options, we're putting data together, we're in contact with them.
Okay.
As soon as we have information, we will share it with the board.
Okay. What data was missing from, I guess what I'm asking is, what data was missing at the beginning that you've been able to obtain since then that would warrant not doing the, I guess I just don't see the downside to exploring that option from the very beginning and at least starting that conversation. I'm not saying that that would be a condition or not, I'm not trying to have that conversation, but what's the hesitation in meeting with them early on to say, listen, clearly the residents on the small little town, on this road are going to be concerned. We all know they're going to be concerned. Let's open that conversation early.
Not having a conversation, but the actual application to get it done. I mean, every conversation that we've had, even at the very beginning, we said, we know these roads better than just, we all live here, we all grew up here. And just, traffic study's not, we know these roads, and it seems impossible that the curb cut wasn't, the application wasn't already sent into MassDOT. So we're actually surprised that that hasn't been done. Most likely, listening to all the comments in the audience, most likely we're going to want the curb cut. So, so the question, yes, you're looking at other options, but so no application has been filed other than the.
We have not filed an application for a curb cut yet. I
Is there
think
a
one of the
plan?
things.
Is there a plan in place for an access road? Do you actually have it drawn?
We do not have a plan yet for an access road. One of the things we're waiting for is the peer review's traffic response. You know, one of the things we have to balance is the design off of Old Worcester Road safe? Is it appropriate? I'm gonna look at our traffic consultant, we're gonna look at the peer review consultant. Do we have drawn plans? No. Are we exploring the potential for plans? Yes. Have we been in communication with the DOT? Yes. Have we submitted an application yet? No. We are continuing to explore and balance, just like you as a board have to take all the information in front of you and balance that. The developer as an economic entity, as a business entity, is taking all of that information and balancing it. We've had the peer traffic for a short period of time. We've been re-reviewing it, providing additional data, analyzing any concerns raised, and we're trying to figure out the best approach. And again, as it evolves, to the extent that we have additional information that we can share, we will bring it forward at a meeting and share it with you.
So the original question, Mr. Bronski actually asked, would you be willing to give us an extension? So
Not at this time.
Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, I have a quick question.
One thing that the board needs to be cautious of and should probably, maybe if all town council is, the challenge of if you put a condition on the applicant that they provide access via Route 20, and that is something that, you know, it's a third party, it's up to the decision of the third party, that may not be an enforceable condition, and you might just want to get an opinion from town council if that is the way the board is thinking of going, if it isn't a friendly condition with the applicant.
We are actively pursuing a land attorney, a land environmental attorney. We've probably called 20 of them. So we're waiting for one of them to actually call us back and want to take the job. So as soon as that happens, we will be consulting away with our attorney. But we're in the meantime, we're waiting. So thank you for the advice.
I think just to clarify what the lawyer was saying is that there's a financial concern about going on from Route 20 because there's a big hunk of ledge right there. So it's gonna cost the developer X amount of money, probably 2 or 3 times the amount of money to make the egress off of Route 20. than it is on Old Worcester Road. So a good neighbor who's gonna bring millions and millions of dollars to the town, you would think they'd step up to the plate and say, look, we're gonna go the extra mile. We're gonna go in and we'll blast, we'll make an egress off of Route 20 and make it safe for everybody. Man, we might take a hit on our initial investment, but in the future, the whole town will be safe. There'll be access in and off of Route 20, and it will be a viable business model and a business for the town. It's just unconscionable that they want to ram an access onto a rural road, and when they have the wherewithal to do it from Route 20. And the reason why they didn't do it from Route 20, because it was a financial.
Thank you, we can't take, we won't do insults or anything. We are right up on this stuff. Jerry?
Quick question. In the first hearing that you held regarding this, the question was asked of the developer if they have met with Mass DOT, and the answer was no. We didn't get a answer as to why not. Question again tonight, have you met with DOT or made application? The answer is no, but there's been some communication. I don't want to accuse them of running out the clock, but I've checked with Mass DOT, Madam Chairman, and there is no indication from Mass DOT that there's any written communication between VGG and Mass DOT. Now, if they're talking to somebody on the telephone, I would like to know, my question would be, with whom are they speaking at Mass DOT?
For the exact reason that Mr. Russell just stated, that he's calling over there and noting that he's already filed multiple suits against the town. We're gonna pursue what we're gonna pursue the way we're gonna pursue it. And when we're ready to come into this board and explain to this board, when we're ready to come before this board and explain to this board what we're doing, as I told you tonight, we're in communication with them. We're looking at various plans, we're looking at alternatives. We're waiting to see the traffic consultant's reports. You know, the presumption that it's unsafe isn't necessarily true, and I hope the board recognizes that based on your own consultant and our consultant, there hasn't been a determination that Old Worcester Road is in fact unsafe. We're looking at it, we're exploring it. If we come up with another viable alternative, we will come here and we will inform the board and we will let the board know that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just one quick question. So I do remember previous meetings when you talked about the curb cut on Route 20. Very early on, you weren't gonna go over the ledge, you were gonna go down around the corner, almost where that turnaround is. That was kind of the preliminary thought. And then at another meeting, I realized, and you guys realized, that it'd be a conservation issue because of the wetlands. So I'm.
You're talking the original access for the retail dispensary off of Route 20 on the other side of the parcel.
Correct.
That we're not doing because we're not doing the retail dispensary.
So is that?
And we've said all along, you can't get from that part of the lot to the main part of the lot because of the wetlands that comes across in between the stone wall there. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was another back access.
No, there was never discussion of a road from down there up to the.
So, and you brought up the word dispensary, so the dispensary is totally off the table. You don't expect in 2 years you're gonna come back and say.
We're at our maximum lot coverage right now. We've designed the site to 25% lot coverage. That is the maximum lot coverage for this property.
And this might be a little question, but do you guys really feel this is the ideal spot
Yes.
that you talked about a few months ago?
Quick question. Okay, my question is for Jerry. If they apply tomorrow for a Mass DOT curb cut, what is the expected turnaround time? What is the anticipated turnaround time of an answer actually coming back? And realistically?
All I'd answer to that, Alicia, is Mass DOT is very slow.
That's what I thought.
I mean, I think anyone that deals with them knows that. There's a process, you're gonna follow it. Everyone knows that. That's really all I could give you for that, because I can't speak to how reactive they would be, but I would say it'd be very simple.
Okay. I've never dealt with them, so I have no guidelines.
I think a phone call to the people up at the brewery could tell you what they went through.
Fair enough.
And that would be a legitimate answer to that question.
Okay, thank you.
Really, the most the board could hope is that a meeting would be held, that there would be either meeting minutes or an email exchange or something that lets the board know whether MassDOT is open to an idea, if it could be, is it a write-in, write-out access, what would it be, where could it be located, that sort of thing. There certainly would not be a permit in place, and they're hesitant until a project has local review to give a permit anyway. I mean, that's typically the steps that are taken. So I would not anticipate any sort of a hard decision.
Fair enough.
Only an indication of their feeling on the matter.
Would it be reasonable, Jen, for you to contact DOT on behalf of the planning board to see whether they would in fact entertain a hookup?
I certainly could.
Would the board?
Yeah,
like
it
that?
wouldn't hurt.
Sure.
Christine, Pioneer Road. I wanted to ask the developers, have they driven the roads along Old Worcester Road?
Yes.
You have. Have you gone up Pioneer Road and come down Pioneer Road where it intersects with Old Worcester Road?
I don't know the names of all the streets in the neighborhood. I've driven around the neighborhood. Our team has been out here for 6 months or longer, driving around the neighborhood, driving to the different locations where we've had the different meetings, and driving around the different streets near the project. I could ask our traffic engineer if you've driven up those streets.
Okay. Well, going down Pioneer Road at the intersection, you have to crawl when you get to the stop sign. There's a large tree on the left, and you have to ease out, and I'm an old lady driver, and I'm always having to stop short quick, almost always, even though I'm easing out. So that's one thing. The other thing is, Mr. Goldstein had stated that this would be a tourist attraction and would bring more business to town. How many tourists are we talking, and how does that affect?
There would be no tourists.
There would be no tourists?
No, I think what he was talking about is if there were a retail store, that would bring business to town. Without a retail store, there would be no driver of business to the town, other than the business derived from the employees who might stop at grocery stores or other places, banks, other businesses, diners, restaurants, car dealers, tire dealers coming in and out of work.
Okay, so now I'm going down Pioneer Road, and I want to go straight or left, and here comes an employee, as I'm sure we've all been in this situation, where you're late for work, or you're late for picking somebody up from daycare, and it's a hazard to me. You know, it's a hazard. The other thing I've wondered is, those 40-foot tractor trailers, I think Rebecca stated you want to keep it relatively quiet. We want more, I want more than relatively quiet. I won't be on Old Worcester Road, but still, relatively quiet in the middle of the night? What is that? I don't understand that. I think that's more of a comment, a consideration. And then in those tractor trailers, those 40-foot tractor trailers, what's in those trailers? Are they hazardous materials in any of those trailers?
I'm just gonna let them answer the question. What's in the 40-foot tractor trailer?
Sure. Some of the deliveries are, in fact, in our narrative, we have what's going into the site, what's coming out of the site. Grow media, Rockwell cubes is one of the larger volume things that would be going in, so that may account for maybe a truck a day. You know, I don't want to do the, what are the trucks off the cuff, but Rockwell, we have employee cafeteria, so there'll be food service coming into the facility. Any expendables for growing, spare parts, things like that. Coming out would be waste in one of a number of forms, as we've discussed in other meetings, whether it's a finished waste or a waste that has to be taken to a landfill, could be coming out, as well as and finished product is a different topic that's happening with the vans. So those are examples of the 40-foot delivery trucks.
So we have 10 40-foot tractor trailers coming in a day, and what they're bringing in is grow media, food, and spare parts.
I can get a more comprehensive list, but
I'm
I'm just trying to give examples.
I mean, I thought.
Oh, I think LNG gas would be another one. I think there were 3 a day.
So if there, yeah, that's an option. If that we wrote that in there, if while we're in the process of waiting for the gas line hookup to happen, that there could be as many as 3 fuel vehicles that could be coming up to the site per day, and we can cover that in a little bit more detail at the next meeting with the discussion of cogeneration.
Thank you.
Can I finish my questions? Thank you. Sorry. On the fuel and transporting fuel through the neighborhoods, what direction would they go? Would they go down Morton Station? Would they be taking that sharp left or a sharp right onto Old Worcester? Are there
We can have them
rules?
answer that. Do you know what direction the trucks would go in?
The fuel trucks.
She's talking the fuel trucks.
I would believe they'd all come in right from the Route 20 intersection. As the gentleman from the supervisor for the DPW had stated, that's where service trucks of that type would come in. I can't imagine them, I wouldn't expect them to come in from any other direction.
Thank you.
But
If
that's
we don't,
3 a
if
day,
we,
so that's-
ma'am, if I don't have them, if we don't kind of answer questions as we go, they all kind of get dragged. I think it's easier to, and I'm sorry that I'm interrupting, but I think it's easier for me to have them answer the small questions.
Okay. And then, can I ask one last question? And that is, they said that they were going to, for traffic, 5 overnight security employees. 5 overnight security employees for an extremely large facility. That's all they have.
Is it?
So we can address that as part of our security plan at a future meeting, and we intend to bring our security consultant with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. I'm Charlene Emco. I live on Martin Station Road, and it's actually addressed to you. While you're out driving around on our rural back roads, have you happened to notice when you go Martin Station Road up to Old Worcester, in January, February, or March, you have all this water runoff, and it becomes very
Ma'am,
icy
you have
and
to
dangerous.
address.
I'm talking to you.
I'm
I
sorry, you
thought
have to. I'm
they're
sorry.
gonna have to answer anyways. I wanna know if they go driving around, when they're riding on our back roads, if they happen to come down Martin Station Road onto Old Worcester Road. It's all rutted there. We have a lot of water runoff, there's ice. The roads are narrow, we've got school buses, we've got kids standing on the side of the street. It's dangerous. And to think of these big tractor trailers and these gas trucks going up the road, that's just an accident waiting to happen.
So is there, do you want me to?
Yeah, I
No.
want them to address that.
What's the actual question? If they actually.
Have they driven around and seen this, how it is in the winter out there?
No, I don't think we've been here in the middle of the winter. I think this project started last spring. If you want to discuss the condition of the road, I mean, I'd ask Jerry, and if Jerry had concerns, I would fact that he would raise them with your peer review consultant, your expert, or he could put them in the summary that he's gonna deliver to the chair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it is dangerous, I just want that noted.
It's good, it's on record. Thank you.
I have one last, just fact I'd like to state. Last year, I had the pleasure of having a kid at Heritage, a kid at the middle school, and a kid at Shepherd Hill. I want to let you guys know that the buses so it's a regional school district, and our high school kids are bused all the way to Dudley. It's not a quick ride from the area you're in, it's about 25 minutes. Maybe, well, actually, it's probably longer for buses because they stop a million times, right? So I want to let you know that the high school buses start in our neighborhood at 6 a.m. It is dark out when the kids are waiting down by the road for the bus. I'd like to let you know the middle school bus currently comes at 6:50 in the morning. And it was Heritage, I don't remember, what was it? 8:30, thank you. I gotta have everybody on my buses here. And you got buses running near your factory from about 6 a.m. till past 8:30 in the morning because you put yourselves in the vicinity of 3 schools. Actually, more, because I don't know Bay Path's route, I don't have anybody up there, but you're very close to 3 schools. I'd like to point out too that there are 0 cultivators in the county located in the agricultural district. They have all chosen industrial.
We just can't, we have to stick
I
with the
just want to let
traffic.
people
Have
know
to.
the facts.
And
That is
we-
a fact.
And we will get, we will.
And then I have one last
I
point
promise
of clarification.
we'll get to, wait, we have I will release our secret schedule.
That was the busing information, which is regarding traffic.
We have an actual schedule where everything we think needs to be addressed, and at the end, I will make sure we note it on video, and then we'll get it out, so everybody knows exactly what we'll be discussing for the next couple of meetings.
Thank you.
I just got it as I walked in, so that's why it hasn't been posted to our website yet.
Okay, 90 Old Worcester Road. What level hazmat material is gonna be coming from your facility? As in chemicals that are used to grow, as in your smokestacks, as in your.
Yeah, is this if you.
But the trucks that are gonna be coming in and out, obviously, some of those trucks are gonna be carrying hazardous waste. That's gonna need to go to the landfill, it's gonna be needing to go to wherever they're gonna dispose of their hazardous waste from their
So your first
cultivating.
question is there any hazardous material traveling in and out?
Yes.
Let's
Thank
take
you,
that at
Gavin.
one time.
Yes.
Any hazmat?
We have to get the details of fertilizers, so these are soluble fertilizers, so that was another truck that I failed to mention before, along with Rockwool, those are the main things coming in. Again, we don't anticipate having to truck fuel up to the site because of the timing of everything, that would be the exception. We could come up with a list for you of any other items that I'm not thinking of right now at this moment, and what DOT schedule they might be.
And when we get to that subject, we'll certainly address any hazmat, anything dangerous that between us and the Board of Health, we'll make sure that we address that.
Thank you very much.
Keep going.
Margaret Russell, Old Worcester Road, 63. We have been told that we will be having traffic on our roads 7 days a week. Are there any other manufacturing businesses in Charlton that are open 7 days a week with this kind of volume of traffic?
House storage on Carpenter Hill.
Carpenter Hill Road.
Thank you.
That's not in the neighborhood.
It's
Just to clear up on the tractor trailer, is it a 40-foot or a 53-foot?
It could be any one.
Or is the whole trailer?
There are
Typically, they're
55-foot
53.
trailers, there are 40-foot trailers
Yeah.
without the tractor.
So you gotta have to have the tractor to pull the trailer.
Absolutely.
Right, so actually, the size of the vehicle, is 53 feet.
If it's a 55-foot trailer, it's gonna be close to 70 feet.
All right, so what is the 40-foot?
Figure 15, 20 feet for the tractor,
Yes.
so 40 is up to 55?
Is that study based on a 40-foot trailer, or?
Yeah. Do you know that detail? Do you know that, or could it be either?
mean, that's gonna affect the turning radius quite
Exactly.
significantly.
Yeah, the turning radius studies, we used the 52 total length.
Total
That'll
length.
probably equate to the traffic we're gonna take. I don't think we anticipate or could handle anything bigger than that.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't say that very loud, so I apologize. If you didn't hear it, I'll repeat it.
So they're saying 52, that the studies were done with a 52 foot.
I just heard the 40.
Yeah, 40-foot trailer.
40 trailer, 52 total length.
And I don't think the site could accommodate anything larger at this point.
So you would make stipulations to people delivering to you that they can't come in with a 55-foot
Yes.
trailer?
Even at that, they would have to go into the left lane before they took that right turn.
I mean, 40 foot sounds much better than 50.
Clark Clancy, Morton Station Road. I'm a little confused about the procedure here, so I hope you could clarify for it. The developer is requesting the approval of the planning board, is that correct? So why are they setting the deadline if they haven't participated in following through on
We
everything?
have,
Why isn't it a time from when they finish doing all of these studies?
the deadline is actually in our zoning bylaw. We prescribed that 90 days, so once we open the hearing, we have 90 days to make a decision. It's been in
But
our
if they
bylaw.
have not supplied the complete study, why is that not, why is that not extended based on their not completing the study? It should be 90 days from when they give you the information, not 90 days from when they say, hey, let's start.
We need to stick with traffic. This is something that, honestly, all our email information is all
All
posted.
right, like I said, I don't understand the procedure, why they're slowing down and you're not, and they're not extending the deadline.
We can discuss it. You can call Bill and he'll explain it, or you can email any of us. And everything's posted, our contact is posted online. You'll be able to, if there's a very black and white answer, we'll be able to help you with that.
And if they don't receive approval, then what?
Ask it all in detail in email, and we will respond, promise. Sorry, I'm sorry you've been waiting a long time.
That's all right, I'm not going anywhere. Maybe I missed it earlier, when these numbers that you talk about, the number of, Ken Howard, 181 Old Worcester Road. The number of tractor trailers and stuff you're talking about and all that, is that based on when the whole plant is at full capacity? Or is that based on when VGG being the first tenant is at full capacity?
That's a full capacity.
The whole place?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. And my other thing, I'm trying to keep this to traffic. I've got a question, I guess, for the Charlton Police, if they don't mind answering, if they can. I'm concerned about safety, mine, my wife's, my kids, anybody. From what I've read, I'm trying to keep this to traffic. From what I've read, people that work at these places all day, between inside the place, the smell, touching the stuff, whatever, I can't help but think that it impacts the employees that work there as far as ingesting, getting high, whatever you want to call it. If one of these employees leaves there after an 8 or 10 hour shift and hits me when I'm walking down Old Worcester Road, do the police have any way to determine if that person is under the influence? I hear on different things, they can tell if somebody's drinking, they can, some people say they can, some people say they can't. I figured if we've got somebody here, maybe they can answer me.
You're stretching with the traffic a little bit, I think.
It's traffic to me, I'm worried about my safety.
We will,
So if I can't answer it here though, I can't answer it, I can't ask it at the next one because that's environmental. So when do I ask it? I'm not trying to be smart, I'm just, I've read a lot of stuff about these online. It's like I'm sure everybody else here has.
Yeah, 14th, community impact, right?
Yeah, so November 14th, we have community impacts, and we're gonna work on getting that whole community impact study actually done. I don't know the procedure for that, and I'll find out as soon as we're done with this. Because just. And we will talk about that. I'm sure that that's something that's in everybody's mind, and it's in ours, but let's deal with traffic, because.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Woman on the, yeah.
Hi, I'm Roxy Wallace. I live at 43 Morton Station Road. I just want to go back to this fact that there's going to be a cafeteria at this location. And this was the answer that we were given to, our employees going to be out getting lunch. Employees go out at lunchtime for things other than lunch. They might go to the bank. The question is this: are these people obligated to stay within that facility for their full 8-hour shift? Like a prison? Or are they going to be allowed out to travel around on our highways that will impact traffic? That's the question that I have.
So, is it mandated that employees stay for their entire shifts? Or you can try to answer the question the way.
There's processes and procedures that employees will have to go through, and so again, employees come to the site, they change, they shower, they get dressed in certain clothes, and they go to work. Some employees have shifts that are going to cover, their specific job purpose. Other employees are working in the finance department. And yes, it's possible some of them may leave and go to the bank. We're human beings. I don't really know how to say that. I wouldn't say that nobody's gonna leave in the middle of the day, but certainly because of the nature of it, 3/4 of the workforce that will be there during the course of the day have very specific technical or technician-related jobs. They're responsible for equipment and things, so.
I mean, one of the reasons that there's a cafeteria there, you don't want, bacteria, mold, disease, you don't want other things coming into the property. You put on a uniform, you shower, you put on a uniform, you go into the service area, you've been checked with security. You wouldn't have the time if you were somebody working in the greenhouses to actually then leave, get in your car, go somewhere, go eat lunch, come back and go through that process again, and get back onto the workflow and do what you need to do for work. Just, that's the whole point of having areas, for food service. I mean, my understanding is they're not even gonna be allowed to bring in their own lunch. You don't want food that could potentially contain germs, you don't want fruits, plants, other vegetables. Everything has to be, cleared from a, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's a sanitation
Sanitation
procedure.
So the majority of the employees are coming in and they don't have time to leave and get back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional questions?
This is to the developers.
You just have to address it through me, that's all.
Okay.
Just how it works.
Okay. Christine Grove, Frenier Road. Have any of the developers been through this traffic process relating to cannabis and all of this that's involved?
You guys have done it before?
If they've done it before in this type of manufacturing process, meaning marijuana, not, widgets.
Yeah, so our firm GPI has worked on 2 other locations, one in Salem, Massachusetts, and one in Lowell, Massachusetts, going through this process, which those ones also included dispensary elements associated with them, so.
More size.
A follow-up?
Were they called the bridges? also?
The Lowell location was a cultivator, the Salem one had an off-site cultivation.
Was it in, what zone was it in?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the zone was, but, both of them were in, like right off of major roadways that had a lot of, commercial, retail components associated with them.
A couple follow-ups. The other developers, have they been through this process before, as I asked the question? Not just the traffic person, because they're a unit that's working together as a whole to solve the community's questions. So I'm wondering if they've been through this process, all of them, with the community.
The traffic process?
Yes.
So has the developer been through this type of traffic process before?
With marijuana.
Yes.
And then another question on this?
Last one.
Well, it's a two-part question. Okay. The first question is, the first part is, how large of a facility have you worked with relating to traffic? And how does that compare to the size of this facility?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what those exact sizes were. For the Lowell one, I think it was somewhere in the range of like 300 to 400,000 square feet for the cultivation center. And I don't know for the Salem one, because that one involved just the dispensary that we were permitting, and the cultivation center already existed somewhere offsite.
Were you doing your study for VGG or for somebody else?
For another.
For another client? That wasn't your question,
No,
was
but
it?
that's a good question.
Okay. So I think she was asking, has VGG been through this process before?
We
The
did a
traffic
traffic
study.
study for a larger site,
For a larger site?
for a larger site.
Did
Does
the
that
site-
answer your question?
Did the site happen?
No.
So, yeah, I'll take one more question.
I'm just not, had to come to a lot of planning board meetings prior to all of this, so I wasn't sure. Oh, sorry, June Ellen Cloutier, 165 Freeman. Because it's agricultural zone, is there anything in place, like I don't know what the terminology would be, whether it's a bylaw or a suggestion or whatever, a rule, as to what kind of tractor trailers or LNG or whatever, is there a limit to what can be allowed into an agricultural zone? Like when I bought my house several years ago, I never really thought about, I thought about minivans and cars and motorcycles traveling down my road. I never really thought of what else could be daily coming down my road. So I was just wondering if we had some kind of general guideline.
Would you like to answer? What do you?
Well, it is possible for town to have truck exclusion routes, where the selectmen could adopt a bylaw that would prohibit trucks on a certain road, but they would need adequate justification, such as, safety or inadequate bridge loads or that kind of thing. So I don't know if the town has any such roads at the moment, but, or whether it'd even be appropriate for that road or not, because there are obviously other trucks that must go down that road too.
But would it ever cross over, and I know this is just traffic, but would it ever cross over into noise? Like, would there be a noise ordinance or
There's
something?
going to be a whole meeting on noise, so.
But would like noise traffic fit into noise?
It would be all the sound based right now versus the sound after the project, and the noise is. Noise will be November 14th, so. I always feel bad when I don't let people have their last, yeah, please.
At the last meeting, Mike from Graves Engineering had raised a concern about the analysis of the required parking, and he had mentioned that the agricultural use has no requirement for any parking. but that industrial use does require the 263 spaces that BGG is proposing. And he was seeking clarification on which section of the zone bylaw actually applies to the project regarding the parking, which has to do with traffic. So I was just wondering if there was ever any clarification on that point?
Yes, the building commissioner, the zoning enforcement officer looked at that question, and he agrees that the number of parking spaces provided would be adequate for that facility.
But which zoning bylaw are we using?
There's only a couple of categories in the parking table that he
Like
can
6
use.
or 8, yeah.
And there's like a transportation utility category.
Yeah.
So that's the one he's using. I think it's 1 per 500 square feet. And we're using 130,000 square feet of processing floor area as the determining factors. That comes out to somewhere around
So you're
260.
using the accessory use to determine the parking? Yeah? Because you guys told me before that
Well,
the
I can-
manufacturing was an accessory.
I mean, I can refer you to the building commissioner's determination as to how we got to that.
Thank you.
And Karen, I will forward you the Kurt's response to that in writing. I have that email and I will do it
Thank
as
you.
well. It's all sent out where transparent as I can be, so you can definitely have that analyzed.
And I swear I'll be really, it might not apply. I was gonna bring it up November 4th, but maybe this young lady can answer the question. In Santa Rosa, California, I found a study was done after the facility was built. It was several years after. I think the facility's 12, 15 years old. I don't remember the exact amount. But because of traffic, and I don't mean car traffic, I mean big trucks and tractor trailers, property values went down. Is there a study that we're gonna do about that, especially through the residential area? This place was built in the residential area. So I don't know if that's traffic or if that's the one for November 4th.
Do you know what type of facility that was?
It was a growing facility. And I think it was Santa Rosa, California.
We will, November 14th, we have community impact, and that's going to be a very interesting meeting, so definitely show up.
It was in a residential area, that's why I kind of think it fits with this thing, residential roads and stuff. But it was the tractor trailers that affected the property values, not the cars.
The community impact will be a big meeting, and we'll make sure, if we don't ask it, you can be
I don't know if
asked.
that falls into traffic or the November 4th.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue.
Second.
Continue it
Yeah, in case of November 7th.
So we're going to continue the meeting till November 7th. I will get on, all in favor? I will get the schedule up on the website so everybody knows what we're discussing, what night. For November 7th, we have municipal.
Okay, wait, we still have a meeting here, people. People,
Guys,
we still have a meeting going on.
quiet down. So on November 7th, I will have this posted within a couple of days. Municipal services, water, sewer, fire, police. Hopefully, we'll get, we'll see if, we'll have all the people who will have the answers to your questions here on that date.
And November 7th is environmental, right?
Or the 14th.
Maybe the 14th.
Yeah.
14th is
The
environmental?
14th is community impact, lighting, odor, soil management, cogeneration, noise. Big night.
And water? Water passed already?
That's on the 7th.
Water's on the 7th?
Yes, municipal services. Water, sewer, fire.
Check our website, we'll have the whole
We'll have
list.
it all posted.
Okay.
But the meeting dates are November 7th, 14th, and 28th.
Got it.
Madam Chair. So I think we had indicated at a prior meeting that our LSP was traveling, so we were going to confirm. I don't think he can make it on the 14th if you have him on for the 14th, but I do think he could fly back in on the 28th. So I don't know if you had him penciled in on any one of, and I know one of the things you were waiting for to make that determination is on your retaining somebody that can speak LSP speak with him, either a lawyer or another environmental engineer. But I did want to just let you know that he might be constrained to only be available on the 28th.
Yeah, it gives us time to get our last night.
Okay?
Do we really, we won't have a time to review though, because at the end of that meeting, we'll need to make a decision. Are you willing to be able to take it all in, not bring it home, and Donna, you comfortable?
We could also have another meeting.
We can't, we wouldn't be able to post, and we have to have a decision.
Post we can, but we're running out of time.
We could post this, this should be on us on Wednesday if we
We'll reach out to Sal. Think about it.
The other thing is, if you guys have somebody, and if your person has questions, comments, or concerns, perhaps we can arrange a conference call with our LSP, and then that way, at least when your person comes and reports, to the extent he had issues, Frank will have had a chance to address them, answer them, respond to them, and then, perhaps comprehensively, your professional can make the presentation, but note that it came with input from Frank who answered those questions. Okay.
Thank you.
So if somebody, as soon as you know who you've engaged, if you let me know, we'll introduce them to Frank and let them kind of have at it. Okay. Thank you.
Do you have any more questions of the agenda?
We'll get.
We'd love to see you.
When, I have it in writing, Bill, will you, or Jane, can you type something up and just get it so you can actually read the handwriting?
It sounds like a couple things might have changed from what we had expected, but I'm sure we can make it work.
We had to try to fit everything in with the amount of meetings, but we'll get it, and then if it's a big issue, we can work. We can work around. We'll make it so you guys are showing up there people, so we are people to talk to your people.
Great, thank you.
When do you think you'll have the results on the additional traffic study?
I believe we can have that 1 week from today, submitted to the town.
Okay.
And that we have to make some updates based on what we heard tonight.
Right.
But we can have that 1 week from today.
Can we do that? Okay.
Thank you.
We could have it prior to next meeting, so in case we have time, we could discuss it if possible, prior to next meeting.
If you get it
From today, we needed to get it to Jen.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah,
we'll have
we
them.
can send it at the same time.
Okay, is that okay with you? Is that okay with us?
And the next meeting is 2 weeks from tonight, so that'll give you a full week. That'll give Jennifer a full week to digest and get back with any comments. And I think we would probably ask the same thing, Jennifer. You know how to, if you had any questions for Rebecca. Okay.
Keep us in the loop too.
Oh, of course, okay.
Okay,
So we have a couple of subjects. We received 2 definitive plans today, or one yesterday and one today. One for the TJA solar project on Carpenter Hill Road, and one for the Charlton Orchard site. If you may recall, both of those projects require protection from zoning changes. So they both submitted preliminary plans, and then they needed to follow those up with definitive plans. So they have provided those definitive plans to the planning office within the 7-month time period. So I'm asking you to just simply accept the submissions tonight, because that starts the clock and acknowledges the fact that they submitted them before the 7-month period expired. So we have accepted them. They meet town standards for acceptance, but it's up to them. They have to be submitted at a meeting of the boards in order to be formally accepted and start the clock. So I'd ask that you accept those 2 plans. Yes.
Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I had the owner of a approved subdivision called Applewood, which you may recall sort of out by the Southbridge line. He has a tripartite agreement with Marlboro Savings Bank in the amount of $77,000. And that was instituted in order to secure the completion of part of Applewood to allow the construction of homes on 3 lots. The developer now says he doesn't want to complete the subdivision. He wants to sell it to some other party to complete. He's asking the planning board to dissolve the tripartite agreement, in which case we would then put those lots back under covenant so that they can be built upon until a different form of security came into effect. So the question to you is, do you want him to come before the board and make his own pitch for that, or do you just agree for him to submit the proper forms for the board to agree?
No, I just have. There's no lock, it's locked, just take the thing out.
Yeah, it's already
There-
locked.
Okay, it should be locked.
I unlocked it.
Oh, then you need the
They were
lock.
freezing.
Oh, okay.
I will lock it now if you just keep an eye. I don't think anybody's gonna come back.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I'll lock it back.
Yeah, that's okay. I say to the lawn subdivision, I'm working on something else for Applewood. This is for the Alley Pond subdivision. I'm sorry for that. So, what would be your pleasure? Would you like to have him come before you to discuss that, or would you just sort of allow him to proceed and sign the document when it's prepared?
So basically, he's looking to get 77,000 back and just be able to sell it to someone else.
Yes, he doesn't want that money tied up with the bank.
Now, what makes the new, the purchases he has?
He's going to start marketing it.
Okay, all right.
In the spring, perhaps, or late winter, something of that order of magnitude. So there is a water main going into that development as part of the Casella project, so that those homes will have water. But so it's really kind of a small portion of the road that we're holding security for, so that he could get access to 3 lots. Mike, do you have any comment, or would you like?
Those lots would not be buildable after that until they come before us again, is that?
They would be buildable now under the tripartite.
Sure.
Because we have security. Once that's withdrawn, they would not be buildable with the back under cover.
Sure, okay.
So
If
that
I
would
could
be
do it now,
buildable.
I wouldn't, I'd be happy just to let him do it.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we accept. Accept that.
All in favor?
And then, I just wanted to mention to you and to the public viewing at home that we do have scheduled a public hearing on the LNG terminal on the western part of town off of Route 20. That, I think you have a copy of the hearing notice.
What was the date of that? It wasn't on the minute there.
Now, is that just a public forum for questions?
Yeah, it looked like it was
Okay,
just
all right.
Right, it is.
It would be
Yeah, they were gonna vote
put on by
on
the
it,
state
right?
board.
The selectmen, it was a discussion meeting with the selectmen, right, on the selectmen board, but it wasn't a vote, right? It was
No,
just
it's
kind of a community.
It's an informational meeting for the energy department?
Right, the Department of Public Utilities has
Yeah.
jurisdiction over that facility. The planning board does not at this point in time. So it's really a public hearing before the selectmen to discuss the siting of that facility.
So it's at the selectmen's meeting on the 13th?
It's November, I get it. It's not in your pile?
I don't have a copy.
I thought I saw it.
Yeah,
I
it's
saw
on
the
the
date too. I
bottom
was
of your
looking at
pile.
the date.
Do you see it on the bottom?
November 13th to November 6th is voting day. It was the following Tuesday.
Following Tuesday?
That is the 13th. I was just thinking last night, so.
Thanks, Drew.
The next item is, you had asked for Mr. Pucci, part of the Kid Power Gymnastics facility, to provide you with information on the exterior colors. So he has done that, just for your information. The area circle, the green is the siding and the white would be the trim.
That's nice.
And then, the last item, I think we should discuss the selection of consultants for the VGG project. I did find, I think, a very good odor consultant, and I believe I sent out his proposal to you. In terms of the noise consultant, I went back to the consultant that you had used prior to the 508. I understand that you were satisfied
Yes.
with that work, so he would be available as well. For the LSP, I have two firms for your consideration. I had been in contact with Ty and Bond, and an LSP named Mark Richards said that he would be interested in doing the work and had submitted a proposal for up to $5,000 for the peer review. And then just before the meeting, I got in contact at Ross's suggestion with Gary Magnuson, who the town uses for its 21E remediation sites. And he indicated a willingness to do that work as well. But obviously didn't have time to get a proposal to you. But he said he did have experience with pesticides and arsenic and other kinds of work that he's done. So he would be interested in doing it. If you like, I can get a formal proposal before you, and then you can make a decision, or you could decide tonight, because time is short in terms of who you would want to go with.
So I'm assuming this is going to be an ongoing site analysis throughout the construction period and maybe further beyond that.
Initially, I think we would be looking at what they've submitted to us
But
for
it would probably
review and
be extended
comment.
on that.
We would have to make that a condition
Which-
that,
Right.
that the
Yes.
firm would, as part of the, if we approved it, then that, I would think that
Construction
that should
site
be.
inspections,
Construction site
things like
inspection.
that,
So, yeah, I think initially, though, we'd be just doing the peer review of the information that we have. And I don't know whether there would be time for the applicant to provide additional information, depending on how much detail would be required. So I think we just have to live with what we've got and have them do the best they can with that information.
Is there any way that we can get information to, like, you mentioned, HMMH, that's
Mhm.
Chris Mensch.
Yes.
Can we get the information to him?
I have already what
You have
we
already?
have, and
Okay.
he got back to me with that
Okay.
information
So do we
that he
need-
had.
Is this the one with not to exceed price, or?
No, that was from Time Bond, that was on LSP. Time Bond
That
was the
was-
LSP.
This is noise.
So-
Yeah, that's noise.
So Time Bond being a larger company, I would think would have more expertise on a lot of the details that we have
I was thinking the same.
coming up.
And Taiwan has a really
Mike, have you
amazing
worked with any-
reputation.
Yes.
I assume you've worked with some of these before.
Well, I mean,
Time Bond.
as far as LSPs are concerned, it's nearly impossible to find one that's solo. And they're very few and far between. Most LSPs are tied in with bigger firms like a Time Bond, such and such, so you get the bigger firm and their rates associated with it, but that's part and parcel. I haven't worked with them specifically in that respect, but I'm sure they're competent.
Well, I will say about Gary, he does have his own company, and he has worked for the town. And I think you could check with the Board of Health, or even the chairman of the Board of Health, or past chairman, how they have built, because they built that, doing the land, the capital landfill in town and stuff like that. So,
I
I
think
think
you're
he's
at it.
in Sturbridge,
Oh,
next town
I
over.
quote
So, that's a
collaborative
benefit. So maybe might reach out, get a estimate from him, just do a compare apple to apple.
Okay.
And a lot of
Why don't you
times,
go timely?
yeah, and a lot of times maybe with the larger firms might be watered down. I'm not saying that people are different than others.
Right, but still.
But you might have a watered down as far as experience in the field maybe. So, any input from the question from the audience?
Yes, John Smith, 136
Yep.
Chestnut Hill Road. Being in the construction business, Time Bond is by far the thoroughest, most.
Gotcha.
They go to the T, they work with Mass Department of Environmental Protection, do all the landfill work, most of the landfill work for all of the towns. They are probably the most, I would say, they hold you to the rule, letter of the law. So, not saying that you're
Yeah,
not
correct.
be.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
That's not the.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's your way, my way, and the Time Bond way, which
Gotcha.
is, they are.
Very thorough.
So you bring up a good point, you have to watch what their fees are, so you have to get that out all in front of you, but I don't know if they're gonna be paying for time on, I mean, they should be paying for, right?
They would. They are, yeah.
We just get the best.
So,
Fine.
do we have a motion to sign the contract with Time Bond?
We can.
Yeah, you can if you want.
I'll
That's
make
what
that
you
motion
wanna
just
get-
to keep
if you wanna
things
get right
moving.
on
Do
it.
we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We don't have much time, so.
No.
I believe
I
it
agree.
is a good point.
We don't have time to drag our
Um,
heels.
I mean, I'm sure they have standard pricing. I mean, unless they're
They-
absolutely crazy, I mean, over. I
Right,
mean,
you should have an
like,
idea
you know,
what
if,
they would
if,
probably
if Bill
charge.
emails you and says this is the price, you would know if it was astronaut, it was crazy, right? Because they're not, I mean, inflated or whatever.
I just know what some of the bigger firms charge. for
Okay.
these.
Okay,
So you can sort of let us know if it's
As
in line.
compared to ours for.
okay, okay. Thank you.
Depending, I'll sort of amend that to go ahead with them,
As long
depending
as
upon the
they're
pricing.
reasonable pricing.
That takes care of that. And did we vote on,
So we have, Mensch who has done
Noise.
noise for us for 508. I thought they were thorough. I have no issues. Did you?
Chris is good.
Unless anybody has another recommendation, I thought they did good.
Right.
One of the done.
I'll make a
Chris.
motion.
So as long as, I make a motion that we go ahead with HMMH,
Second.
as long as their pricing is reasonable.
Second.
Okay?
All in favor?
Aye. And this one is,
You have the order lined up, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's.
He submitted a
that's the-
proposal.
Then the only one we're waiting on is a land lawyer attorney?
Correct.
Okay,
So that's our public.
that's for that. Not the
No, that's
service
in-
line.
oh, this is the media.
Yep.
Okay, that's
That's just,
the.
This is the
that,
meeting.
you just handed that. That was the announcement
Okay.
that I just, it came to me, I opened it up and I gave it to them. That's the announcement about the
Right.
the information.
The LNG public hearing.
And do you want to just say the date on record, so in case anybody listening that wants the date can follow up on that?
Yes, it's November 13th at 7 o'clock in the Board of Selectmen meeting room.
And that's for the new LNG gas,
Liquefaction.
yeah, just public forum.
So we've got time bond
Yep.
for HMMH.
Yep.
And we're still waiting
The
on
order-
the
the
order
order.
that,
Well, no, he given us a proposal.
or do we have him, do we have the?
No, it's by email. I don't
Okay,
actually
okay.
have the written, thing to sign yet, but.
So we found an odor guy. He is just, if you do research about him, he's pretty amazing. He has his doctorate in engineering, and he specializes in, so there's not many people who specialize in marijuana, odor, just saying. So he specializes in wastewater, and he has his own research lab, and he is just, he's written multiple books, and he has multiple papers published, and he's, I think,
So the process of dealing with wastewater odors is completely
well, he's an
different
odor
process.
doc, that's his specialty, but he does all sorts of, did you get the email for this guy? Did you get the?
No, I don't think we got it.
Oh, so.
Okay, I'll pass
we'll
that
share.
on.
So
That'd be great.
his resume and his background is absolutely amazing. It isn't, that's what he's kind of renowned for, that figuring out how to get rid of that odor.
Okay.
But he has he's written many publications on everything else.
PhD in odor.
And he's in Connecticut, so there's no conflict, you know what I'm saying? So
Okay.
he looks great, so you guys can review it. I was pretty impressed.
Good.
And I don't have a sense of smell, so.
They're
You
hard
can
to
tell me
find.
whatever they
Yeah,
say.
so they're hard to find, and he's local. I mean, he's,
What's the rest of it? What's the rest?
Yeah, right.
Okay, that sounds good.
Anything else?
Bill's-
Anything else?
Bill.
Did I say?
Oh, you got bills.
Oh, you got
I
bills.
have,
Oh.
Bill's consulting fee in the amount of $3,300. It is 55 hours from the period of October 8th to October 19th, and I did authorize more than 20 a week during this period. We're just under the gun, and we need more bill time,
Right.
so.
Yeah, we get a lot of time.
I said,
I'd like to make a motion to approve that amount.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
James payroll for pay period, payroll period ending 10/26 in the amount of $920 and 26.
Make a motion to approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we make a motion that we increase our own salaries as we keep adding meeting after meeting?
You don't get what we get is all the hours.
Stipend?
I wanted to, we
We
had.
did have a list of.
On Tuesday, we met with, yesterday, we met with a couple of other departments to talk about the BGD and concerns, just to make sure that we all kind of crossed our Ts.
Everybody was looking at their own.
Yes, at their own specialty.
So we have, Jane and I, and Jane all have notes from that meeting.
I'll print that up and get you.
Pretty much, they all just adored it, and we were kind of questioning why we're being so critical and stuff. It was kind of I left alarmed, so Jane is my witness. This is I'm not. So one of the terminology, one of the thing that was used was they're just collateral damage. Serious, and I'm saying this because I want it on record, because I'm kind of upset that this was the attitude that our town is our employees that work for the town and elected officials in this town. They need to take one for the team, and it's a few for the greater good of Charlton. That's what came up during the meeting. I quote it and I have it in my notes. That's exactly what came out of the mouth, and I was pretty upset about that. It seems it kind of actually scared me. And again, want on record that our board is an elected board, and we have one thing in mind, and that's we don't honestly care about the revenue. We care about protecting, making good decisions for the town, and that all the questions and everything we're doing is, again, for the future and the good of the town. And I want on record that I was insulted, and I've made the right calls within the town hall. Didn't want that attitude. I was pretty jaw dropped. So I just
Thank you for attending that meeting.
Yeah,
Everybody,
thank you, Jane, as well.
So I should say, the big thing that came out of that meeting was Todd did have a lot of concerns about erosion controls, because there's the soil's bad.
Yeah.
So and he'll chime in and he'll forward more comments about the erosion control around the outer side, and it was actually a great catch, because we wouldn't really have known. And as we get through more of the soil evaluation, we'll be able to make sure that that's addressed to the best of our ability as kind of laymen.
All right, thank you. The other thing, future agendas, do you have draft agendas, Nancy, to Jane, leave those in your packet?
Yes.
So are you okay with those as proposed, or do you have any
I'm okay with
suggestions?
anything. I think we're, on some of them, it's a little heavy.
It's gonna be,
I
but
know.
yeah.
That's why I'm kind of asking whether you,
And it's,
We'll have to move it along a little.
I was gonna say, I think we need to control the public forum a little bit.
I thought this was better.
This was better, but I think, I was at another town meeting for a completely different project a number of years ago, and they gave people time limits, and they actually
Yes.
sat here with a timer, and when the timer went off, you were done, because you had a whole room full of people that needed to speak.
You've got one question, choose your best one.
Exactly.
No, I get that, but and again, I know they're only collateral damage, but they like
No, it's not
I know,
that though,
and-
it's that, we can only control so much, so when they start giving opinions,
Right.
that's, an opinion is not a question, and they're leaving, and we're still here till 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm aware that they might not think that it's a good idea, and I can appreciate that opinion, but there has to be a question in that, because we're at the point of a public hearing for questions, to get direct
And
questions
other
answered.
boards and other people have kind of nubbed me for that, and but I just think this is
It's huge.
This is huge, and
Agreed.
and it's the biggest thing Charlton has and
Yes.
will ever see, most likely, you know. However, and clearly that is blinding 90% of the people in the town hall. But we need to, I think the residents need to talk.
Well, they do.
The selectmen shut them down, and I'm not shutting them, not shutting them down,
Well,
so.
we do need to control
I mean, we
it
need
to a
to.
time frame.
Exactly.
And I think limiting the amount of time.
Per
not-
question?
Not only their question, but the answer that's involved.
Yes.
Okay, and that's it.
Right.
And if you want, I will keep time. I will bring my thing
Yes.
and I'll cut them off. But I really think, and if they know
Yes.
this upfront,
Yes.
and we may not get around to anybody for second questions.
Correct.
So if something comes up, have somebody else answer
That's
it,
right.
ask it or whatever, but.
So it's one question each, you wanna?
Well, it's a time limit, so if you
It's
can
a
get out
time
3
limit.
questions in your time, in your 3 minutes. But the other part of that is some of these questions that are being asked, we
Lead
have no
to-
control
Right,
over.
and their comments.
So they're more comments, they're more, and that's not benefiting anybody, because what we want is this meat and potatoes. Because then maybe the guy sitting over there doesn't ask this question because it's running late, and now maybe his question is actually something we can control, where these 3 people are giving opinions. And I can appreciate opinions, opinions are what email are for, questions are what public hearings are for.
I
And
do
think
have.
if we let them know upfront.
Yes.
How it's going to
Yes,
run.
I totally
And
agree.
don't just
Because, you know,
spring it
there's
on them.
5 people that have all the questions that have analyzed everything, so that's the issue. So we'll have to tell them to spread those questions around and have them all, I mean, I wanna
It's a
make
time
sure that
thing.
they're,
It's a time?
they catch things we don't.
They
They
totally
do.
agree. That's,
They do.
but that's what
And since
email
we
is
don't,
for.
we don't
We
have
also
a
hear
full.
from things that have already been answered.
That's right, multiple times.
So then we'll watch, we'll pay more attention to keep these more, together. The other comment that I had was, so, on record, our selectman Singer isn't voting on BGG because of his distance, how he feels traffic will affect his home. So the
Okay.
Ethics Commission told him that that was a reasonable, but that was the reason, that was okay, an okay reason to, to recuse himself from voting. So I just want to make sure that, our board doesn't have any
I was
ethics.
just gonna say
So I
that.
said,
Should I check
so
with
could you
ethics?
please give them a call and tell them that we have a selectman that isn't voting for that reason, and you just wanna make sure that it's okay for you to vote, that it wouldn't be looked as any conflict. We don't want a
Exactly.
conflict. We don't want an appeal because of that. So we wanna just protect our board. I don't think that you're biased and.
No, it's
in any
great,
way.
I've thought about it too, and it's, the other part of that, and I'll be perfectly selfish, is why sit here until 10 at night if I can't have any opinion? It's like being the alternate juror who can't vote. It's, I mean, and I can appreciate both sides. So if they say yes, you are a go, it's a go. If they say no, well then I'll stand down, and I'm okay with that.
But I think you bring good questions, so I wouldn't want to lose out on the questions
Your
that you're
knowledge and
bringing
it.
to the
Okay,
table.
because I'd have to ask them at what point, can I still ask questions, can I still do this?
Check with that.
Yes.
If you're in the audience, can you ask a question?
Right.
I mean, there shouldn't be an issue because you're not within, you're not.
You're not within the 300 feet.
I'm not.
Because I was
But you're
told,
within the 1,000
I
feet.
was
And I'm
told by
past
the.
the curb, I'm past the road down to Route 20, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
So I was told by the assessor that they're going to assess all the homes on the road within 1,000 feet. And they're going to assess it before, and then they're gonna assess it a year after, right?
Okay.
And you did during that part of the
Yes.
conference? And they're going to give the homeowners the difference.
Oh, wow.
I didn't hear that.
That's what they're gonna do. So-
Technically, the extension is a separate road, so I don't know how that's gonna work.
that offer yet, but.
Yeah, so so we did ask, so we asked, is it in writing? And it's not, of course, but,
Yeah, I wouldn't even mention that.
but again, I'm
I'm gonna go
just.
change the sign then and take the extension part of that down. That's okay.
The assessors, Debbie said it was within 1,000 feet.
again, the extension's a separate road, so we'll see how that goes. I don't know if they're going.
You're still within 1,000 feet of the.
I mean, are you within 1,000 feet?
I don't know, I'll have to go get my tape measure out.
One, two. I'm just, and again, I'm just because this financial,
Of course.
and if you're within 1,000 feet, and whether that happens or not, it was discussed in a kind of our forum,
Sure.
and I
It's a
want to
great
make sure,
thought.
I want to make sure that we're,
I'll call Deb and ask her tomorrow.
just
Yeah,
to
that's a good
make
idea.
sure.
Yeah, she'll know which houses are impacted.
Okay.
Right, she'll know where the 1,000 feet
That's
is.
exactly right. Because it also, I mean, if we're going a radius, as a circular radius, then you might also get Hamrock, you might also get Pernier,
Right.
you might also get some of the other ones, Morton Station, because depending on how we're doing this,
I'm sure that they are.
yeah.
So,
1,000 feet.
I'm tired, do we have anything else?
No, no,
Oh, one more question. Do we have any town planner applicants?
no.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. All right.
No one, who wants to walk in the middle of this? Even,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
on favor?
Aye.